destroy everything, or make sure this betrayal doesn't go unpunished. I grew up in an upper-middle-class family. We weren't filthy rich, not like multi-millionaires or anything, but we lived in a huge all-brick home with all the amenities. Mom wanted a tennis court, so Dad built her one. They both loved horses and owned 4, which were stabled on my grandfather's farm, 2 quarter horses, a pinto, and an Appaloosa. My dad, Andrew Davenport, is the COO of Donner Paints, Inc., which manufactures a variety of paint products. Donner Paints isn't one of the big 3 paint manufacturers, but is still a very large corporation competing in the top 10 in nationwide sales with numerous distributors. His annual salary was comfortably nestled in 6 figures, although I wouldn't learn what his actual salary was until I was much older. The plant employs close to 250 workers. I was oblivious of my parents' favoritism for several years. My older brother by 18 months, Brandon Andrew Davenport Jr., proudly bore my father's name. I didn't have a problem with that. My father went by Andrew, so they called him Brandon. My name was less auspicious. I was born prematurely at 4 pounds 8 ounces with a cute cherub face, I was told. Mom argued that since my dad had named my brother, it was only fair that she name me. To keep the peace, he conceded. I wish he hadn't. She named me after her mother and her grandmother, proudly saying that they were the 2 strongest women she knew. I'm Ashley Quinn Davenport and go by Quinn. At least Quinn is a unisex name. I'm not sure if a man has gone by Ashley since the Civil War. I remember seeing an Ashley as an important character in the movie Gone with the Wind and clung to that image to bolster my masculinity. By the time I was 4, Brandon's physical prominence was becoming glaringly apparent. He was stout, athletic, and very good-looking. I was diminutive comparatively, not only because I was younger. At my age, he had been a much more impressive specimen than me. Mom and Dad's partiality was obvious to us both. Birthdays and Christmas were exceptionally exciting times for my brother, who invariably received more than he asked for, while I received about half of my wish lists. But if we were going out to eat as a family, Brandon was asked where he'd like to go, and that's where we went. When I attempted to preemptively offer a suggestion before Brandon was asked, Dad or Mom would smile and say, "Let's see where Brandon wants to go." And that was that. For as long as I can remember, my parents invited all of our extended family to our home every spring, summer, and fall for family picnics/parties. I loved to see all my cousins, aunts, and uncles, some of whom worked at the plant under my dad. But my favorite relative by far was my Grandpa Davenport. He seemed immune to the bias shown to Brandon and spent much of his time with me at these picnics. It felt immensely rewarding that, of my entire family, I had at least one person in my corner, albeit the oldest member perhaps, but Grandpa was the best. He always said he loved rooting for the underdog. Starting the summer I had turned 12, Mom and Dad told me that I was going to spend the summer with Grandpa. I loved my grandpa and all, but he lived on and worked a large 400-acre farm consisting of a variety of crops and animals. It was nice to visit for horseback riding and all, but after a while I'd soon be missing family activities, friends, and normal summertime fun. I wasn't given a choice, so I went. His farm was located in the country outside the city limits. Grandpa treated me like royalty. He catered to my every whim and made sure that I lacked for nothing. He let me drive his old beat-up farm truck anywhere I wanted on the farm, even though I was too young for a driver's license. The emergency brake hadn't worked for years. The cable was rusty. I once saw him press hard on it with both feet and it wouldn't budge. He said it didn't matter. After the first week, he introduced me to Juan Hernandez, who managed all the farm hands. I was slipped in with the other farm hands, doing whatever Juan asked me to do. Mostly I fed the pigs and other barnyard animals and mucked the stalls. The cattle were tended by others, being in a field a mile away from the barn. Juan was a nice enough man, but what I liked best was his daughter, Luisa Hernandez. She was 11, a year younger than me. She was the prettiest girl I had ever seen, so I tried to hang around her as much as I could. She helped me better understand and appreciate the way of life as a farmer. Once our chores were done, Luisa and I would often saddle up 2 horses and ride the farm boundaries together, checking the fences. We rode the quarter horses because of their easygoing temperament. Mine was the chestnut. We both looked forward to those rides when the weather was nice. For some reason, Luisa looked even better on a horse. We spent a lot of time brushing them down. Aside from horseback riding, Louisa was a runner. I was amazed at how that girl could run. For fun, she'd challenge me to foot races, and I never stood a chance. More than a few times, I'd follow her on horseback as she would hone her cross-country running skills. She reminded me of the character in the movie Chariots of Fire. She was a natural. On rainy days, I'd drive her around the farm in Grandpa's old farm truck for fun. In junior high school, Brandon played football and basketball. He had several growth spurts that put him at 6 feet by 8th grade. I had no interest in sports, but instead joined the chess club. Brandon was super popular, lettering in both sports. He mocked my chess trophy. I merely accepted that's what brothers do. What I lacked in physical prowess, I made up with wit and humor. I was quick with funny, self-deprecating remarks, and everyone seemed to enjoy my company. Brandon resented my growing popularity, but knew I'd never rise to his level, so he left me alone. Still, every summer, like clockwork, I was banished to Grandpa's farm. Don't get me wrong, I dearly loved him. He treated me more like a son than a grandson, but I wondered why Brandon never had to go to the farm. Life was never fair. High school was a whole new world. Brandon was now 6 feet 3 inches tall, with a muscled, robust body somewhere between Adonis and Hercules. His chiseled good looks drew the attention of every female within eyeshot. His strength made him the team captain. I must admit I was jealous of how well-liked Brandon was by the girls. He constantly dated but never had a steady girlfriend. He didn't need one. Nearly every girl in the school thought he was a dreamboat. During my junior year of high school, Jenny Creedmoor and I became fast friends working together on the yearbook committee. She was in on planning and design while I was one of 2 designated candid photographers. She was also a cheerleader. I was surprised to merit her attention in any way. I was barely average looking, unlike my brother. Unfortunately, my growth spurts never matched his. I topped out at 5 feet 6 inches. I was only an inch taller than Jenny, but still respectable. I'd seen Brandon as a senior ask many girls out casually, but I was sweating as I finally developed the nerve to ask Jenny out on a date. I nearly passed out when she said yes. After a couple of months, we were both smitten with each other. I asked her to go steady with me, to be my girl exclusively. She happily agreed as I slid my class ring on her finger. We frequently went out and talked often about our long-term future together. We agreed that after we both turned 18 during our senior year, we'd then give each other the gift of our virginity. At the end of that school year, my parents made a big production of Brandon's high school graduation. They wanted the whole family to attend his ceremony and honor his accomplishment, though he graduated with only a 2.4 GPA when he walked across the stage to accept his diploma. All the girls went crazy, applauding and cheering for him. Later that same afternoon, Dad drove us all to the VFW facility where he had rented their huge dance hall for Brandon's surprise graduation party. Every member of our large extended family was in attendance, along with about a dozen of Dad's close friends and co-workers from the plant. But what excited Brandon the most was the presence of 30 to 40 of his closest school chums, comprised mostly of girls. He was in 7th heaven. Dad had hired a live band for the event and had the entire celebration luxuriously catered with delectable food. Brandon received several congratulatory cards from those in attendance wishing him good luck for the future. Right after the evening buffet was served, Dad opened a garage door where everyone was herded outdoors. He proudly handed Brandon the keys to his graduation present and excitedly extolled its many features. It was a brand new Chevrolet Corvette Z06 with custom blue pearlescent paint. He touted it as the king of American performance cars. It sported 305-section Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R tires front and back. It had the optional carbon ceramic brake system and a 5.5-liter V8 670 GP engine with the quick shift 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. This baby goes from 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. My brother was super elated to receive this gift. He immediately took my parents for a spin in it, but sternly informed me that I wasn't allowed to ever touch his new car. I was relieved. I wanted nothing to do with it or anything associated with him, and walked away with a grin on my face. While he was test driving his new wheels with Mom and Dad, I looked up his car online with similar features. MSRP was close to $75,000 for the car alone. When all the options and customizations were added in, It easily topped out at around 90 grand. That was encouraging. I aspired to receive something similar when I graduate. I still had one more year to go. The best thing was, I was very much looking forward to spending another summer at Grandpa's farm this year. For the past 3 summers, Grandpa had surprisingly placed me in charge of the entire farm workforce. Over the years, he'd taught me every aspect of the farm that needed tending to, and trusted that I'd direct everyone to keep the farm running smoothly with my guidance. Juan Hernandez, the farm foreman who usually operated under the supervision of my grandpa, readily accepted my authority, and we kept the farm running efficiently. It didn't seem to bother him a bit that a teenage boy, young enough to be his son, was the summer boss. I had made fast friends with everyone who worked under my grandpa, and we all got along famously. Summers were extremely busy for us all with vegetable harvesting, pest control, fertilizing, and tending the orchard. I asked my grandpa once why he asked only for my help every summer and never Brandon. His vague reply was that I was a natural. Brandon doesn't have what it takes. There were times that I longed to be more than just a natural-born farmhand, but I never spoke a word of complaint to my grandpa. When I returned home from the summer at the farm, Brandon was packing to go to college. My parents somehow managed to get him enrolled in George Washington University in Washington, D.C. in their 4-year degree program in business administration. I looked them up. Annual costs would be over 40 grand per year. That ignited my excitement about where I may end up going after I graduate high school. Even if I was sent to George Washington University along with Brandon, it was a big campus. We could avoid each other and both come out with business degrees. That would nicely prepare us both for management positions in Dad's company. I was sure that Brandon was being groomed for that. My senior year in high school sailed by as smoothly as silk in Brandon's absence. Even though I wasn't a jock, I was still exceptionally popular due to my affability. I always showed great interest in anyone I was with at the time and did my best to treat others as I wanted to be treated. Many expressed how different I was from my brother and loved my lack of arrogance that he capitalized on. I had turned 18 years old back in February. Jenny's 18th had been in April of that year. The senior prom was to take place on May 25th. Jenny and I had not been intimate yet. We both decided to wait until prom night to give ourselves to each other. It would be a night we'd never forget for as long as we lived. During our senior year, Jenny and I had a standing date every Saturday night. Very often we'd go out Fridays as well, depending on her family's plans. They seemed thrilled that Jenny had latched on to me. I had purchased a ring for her and was planning to propose on prom night in front of her family while we were all dressed up. Of course, the wedding would wait until after we both graduated. I'd already spoken with her father, seeking his approval. He gave me his hearty endorsement. After all, I was the son of a well-to-do family, and they were struggling. I had made reservations at a very expensive restaurant for prom night with firm plans to make her my fiancée that very night. "Hey, Jenny, it's me. I know I don't have to because we have a standing date night, but I wanted to make sure we're still on for this Saturday night." I had purchased the ring that day and was very excited to see her without letting the cat out of the bag. "Hi, baby. Oh, I'm so glad you called. I almost forgot. 2 of my girlfriends are coming over to give me a perm. One of them is trained and the other wants to learn. So we thought this would be a fun opportunity for them to get more experience and for me to save some money. Would that be okay with you, honey? I meant to mention it to you before, but it slipped my mind until just now." Disappointed, I replied, "Sure, I understand. We'll have other Saturday nights. I may just call my friend Brian and catch a movie or something that night." "Oh, thank you for understanding, baby. I promise I'll make it up to you on prom night. You have no idea how much I'm looking forward to being with you," she said, enthused. Saturday afternoon, I gave Brian a call. "What's up, man?" "Me? I never hear from you on Saturdays. What happened, Quinn? Is Jenny on death's door or something?" "Nah, she's getting her hair done tonight, so I was looking to see if you wanted to catch a movie or something tonight." "Can't tonight, Quinn. I promised April I'd take her to the Shakedown tonight. You know, that new teen dance club that opened a few weeks ago? It's an open house tonight. Everybody's going to be there. Hey, why don't you join us? You could bring your camera and get some awesome shots for the yearbook. I'll even let April dance with you a few times." "Yeah, I heard about that place. I suppose I could check it out. It might be fun at that. I'll meet you there. What time? I'm picking April up at 7:30, so 8? 8 it is. Thanks, Brian. I made sure my compact camera battery had a full charge with a clear memory chip. I imagined catching a few seniors doing some crazy antics. I found April and Brian's table in a corner of the room. The dance floor took up most of the floor space with tables scattered around the edges. All the good tables were already taken. Brian was right. A ton of our cohorts were there. Although no alcohol could be served, they had a great variety of other beverages. I bought drinks for the three of us. April and Brian shook their booties on the dance floor while I watched her purse. I scanned the room for potential candid shots and managed to take a few from my seat at the table. After they returned, Brian offered me a dance with April as he had promised. She was game, so off we went. I told her I wanted to move about the dance floor to see if I could catch any crazies acting up. As we approached the opposite wall, I saw a dark room with beads draping the entrance. "What's that over there?" I asked April. "I haven't been in there, but I heard it is a large coat room. Since it's warm out and no one brought any coats, I've heard that sometimes a couple sneaks back there to make out sometimes." She explained. "Well now, do tell. Hang on, let me start my camera recording video. I'll slip it through the beads and aim it all around the room. Who knows, this might be a great yearbook opportunity." I chuckled. The music was very loud with a heavy pulsating beat. You could set off firecrackers and not draw any attention. I sidled up next to the opening, slipped the camera through the beads, and let it adjust to the dimly lit room. Looking at the viewfinder window facing me, I found only one couple in the room. From outside the room, I couldn't make out who it was, but I aimed it at the couple and held it as steady as I could for about 60 seconds, then slowly retrieved the camera. I chuckled again as I returned with April to the dance floor. She asked who it was in there. I said I had no idea, but would check it later after we returned to our table. April sat down and took a few sips of her drink and revisited the hectic dance floor with Brian. They were having a lot of fun. Everyone was. This place was sure to be a big hit. There were more than a few college students in attendance as well. After quenching my thirst, I decided to check out the video I had captured in the makeout room, as I now called it. It wasn't clear at first, but as the light adjustment and focus features of my camera kicked in, I started viewing crystal clear video of the action going on. A guy was standing with his back to the camera, and a girl wearing a yellow dress was on her knees and appeared to be giving him a blowjob. She was completely into it. I heard him come loudly as he groaned above the din of the music. After he was spent, I saw him step to the side as he zipped his pants up. He looked familiar from the back. She looked familiar from the front. It was Jenny. Damn! Shit! What was worse is the guy she was with was my older brother, Brandon. Damn them both. My first thought was that I didn't even know Brandon was back home from college. His collegiate year must have ended before my high school year ended. My second thoughts were that I had dodged a bullet. The ring in my bedroom sock drawer was going back to the jeweler tomorrow. Jenny lied to me. She lied to me so she could go out on a date with my brother tonight. She thought I'd be at a movie, so they thought I'd never know. Before that revelation, my brother and I got along okay and tolerated each other. That ends right here, right now. I have nothing but hatred for him now. He knew very well that Jenny was my girl exclusively. I guess he wanted to find out how exclusive. I waited until April and Brian returned to the table. I was responsible for her purse. They could tell that I was visibly upset. "What is it, Quinn? You look like you lost your best friend," Brian questioned. "I did, and a brother to boot. Jenny's cheating on me with my brother Brandon." "I can't believe she'd do that to you," April uttered. "Brandon's a big-time asshole, so there's no surprise there. But Jenny, I just can't believe it." "Take my word for it. They're in the makeout room right now," I assured. "What are you going to do?" they asked in unison. "What I should have done a long time ago. I'm sorry, I'll be lousy company tonight. I think I'll split. You two don't need me spoiling your night. Have a great time." Brian nodded. "Are you going to be okay, Quinn? I can take April home and be there for you in your hour of need," Brian offered. "Thanks, man. I appreciate that. You're a great friend. But you and April stay and have fun." I made my way across the dance floor back to the makeout room. I slipped inside as unnoticeably as I could. Brandon and Jenny were heavily making out again. This time his hand was up her dress, actively fingering her, perhaps to return her earlier favor. I walked up to Brandon with his back facing me. Jenny was so into kissing him that she didn't notice me until it was too late. I interlocked both of my hands and fingers together, making a huge fist of them. With all my might, I struck Brandon on the side of his head, knocking him down on the floor. Without wasting a moment, I grabbed Jenny's hand and quickly slid my class ring off her finger. As I dropped it into my pocket, I asked, "How's the perm going, Jenny? Your hair looks nice. You did all this for me? We're done. Don't ever speak to me again, ever," I seethed. "I'm getting the hell out of here," I said as I made a quick exit. When Brandon finally got his wits about him, he started yelling. I heard Jenny scream my name, sobbing. I wonder what she's going to tell her parents about our breakup. If they press me, I'll be more than happy to share the video with them. I rushed home and uploaded a backup copy of the video to an online email account that I alone knew about. I knew Brandon was going to complain about me blindsiding him to my parents. Before the golden boy could get there, I preemptively made my case for what little it was worth, so they could see that, in my view, I had a reason for my actions. I showed them the video recording. "Quinn, that's disgusting. Are you some kind of pervert? Who records something like that? Delete that memory chip this instant. This instant, do you hear?" my mother demanded. "Mom, I'll do as you ask under one condition. You'll do it because I said so. But what is your condition?" "If you and Dad will both admit that I had a legitimate reason for doing what I did tonight. I was going to ask her to marry me. Not anymore, I'm done with her. Think about it. If it was Brandon's girlfriend that I sexually seduced instead, would you agree that he would be justified to be just as angry with me?" They looked at each other. Then Dad contributed, "Look, son, we realize that this is a shock to your system. Jenny is a nice girl. Your mother and I agree, but she isn't the one for you. Maybe Brandon did you a favor by pointing out her character flaws. We'll talk to him when he comes in. I'll make sure he doesn't come after you for any retribution. Let's chalk this up to a big misunderstanding, okay?" That was as close to an apology by my parents for my brother's behavior as I was ever going to get. I removed the memory chip from my camera and handed it to my mom. "Here, Mom. You can delete it if you want to. If Jenny calls, I won't talk to her. Tell her anything you want. I guess you two and Brandon get everything you want again. I get shortchanged as usual. Tell Brandon he can have her all he wants from now on." Then I walked away to my room and shut my door. Mom and Dad remained silent, content that they had spared their golden boy the embarrassment of such an explicit recording. Brandon stormed in a while later, but true to their word for once in their lives, they prevented his recrimination. Jenny approached me in school the following Monday. "Quinn, I feel terrible about Saturday night. Please let me explain." "No, Jenny, I don't need any explanation, nor would I believe a word you say anyway. Please leave me alone. If you don't, you'll regret it. I'll see that your father finds out how you betrayed me." "I know that's a bluff. I don't believe you. Brandon told me the recording you made was destroyed." "Try me," I said as I walked away. And try, she did. Her father called me 4 days later asking what happened between Jenny and me. She had told him I broke up with her for no reason except that someone was telling lies about her, indicating that she was unfaithful to me. She postulated that another girl may be trying to steal me away from her. I sent him a copy of the recording. I never heard from her or her family again. The last few days of school, Jenny was around, but thankfully, she avoided the crowd I hung out with. I tried to be the bigger person. Although I could have trashed her reputation, I didn't. When my friends asked why we broke up, I said only that we disagreed on some important issues and left it at that. I didn't want to destroy her. I just wanted her out of my life. I realized that for the first time in a long while, I no longer had a girlfriend. Louisa would have occupied that slot nicely, but that was not in the cards. I hung out with my friends. Many of us went to the Shakedown Club for a night of fun. I never lacked a dance partner. Other guys trusted me with their girls on the dance floor because they knew me to be a person of integrity. But when it came time for the senior prom, I decided to make lemonade out of a lemon. I received Juan's blessing to ask Louisa to be my date for the event, and we had the most incredible time together. As she matured, she had become a raven-haired version of beautiful athlete Paige Van Zandt. She was a vision of beauty that floated like an angel. She told me that her amazing dress was a gift from my grandpa. I made a mental note to thank him later. My high school graduation was only 10 days away. I finished my exams and did very well. I focused intently on my studies now that Jenny was no longer a distraction. My parents noticed that I was not speaking to my brother but didn't make an issue of it. I would avoid both Brandon's smirks and running into any of Jenny's friends over the summer. What I most looked forward to over the summer was seeing my BFF again. Although I had always been the perfect gentleman around Louisa, her father, Juan, came to me soon after I arrived after he noticed that we were hanging out a lot more together than usual. "Quinn, you're a fine young man with a good heart. My Louisa is the same, a great girl with a good heart. I wish it was otherwise, but the two of you are from different worlds. You come from wealth. My Louisa comes from this farm life, and it will always be so. Your family would never allow the two of you to be together. You have shared with me many times how they run roughshod over you and control your life. It is my job to protect Louisa. I do not want her heart broken. She really cares for you, maybe even loves you. I need you to keep your distance so she doesn't hope for a future that will never be. Will you help me protect her?" As sad as those words were for me to hear, I realized that they had a ring of truth to them. I acknowledged Juan's wisdom and told him I would do my best to honor his wishes. Although Louisa and I both now realized that we would never be together, I made sure that she knew that I treasured her as my best friend. I never once asked her for sex. I respected her and her father far too much for that. Suddenly I was hit with a ton of suspicion. Juan was right. My parents never fully embraced Jenny. Were they somehow complicit in Brandon's seduction of my girlfriend? That thought rankled me. Am I nothing more than a puppet? Mom and Dad urged me to stay in close contact with Brandon since we were brothers, but I had zero interest in doing that. As a result, they constantly updated me on everything that was going on with him. I feigned interest for their sake, but never offered comment. I realized that I should have expected it, but it still shocked me that my parents couldn't make it to my high school graduation. Brandon had returned to GWU for their graduation ceremonies. He was going to be a marshal carrying a flag leading groups of graduates at GWU's commencement to their seats, and they simply wouldn't miss that for the world. They nearly insisted that I skip my graduation and ask the school to mail me my diploma so that I could be there to support my brother. They relented after seeing my saddest puppy dog eyes and left me behind. I was shocked to see Grandpa and every one of the farm hands and families in attendance at my graduation ceremony. They all made me feel loved. Louisa asked me to point out Jenny, which I did. She glared at her until we left. Grandpa treated us all to my surprise graduation party at his farm. In addition to the farm workers, every single member of my extended family was there complete with children, except for Brandon and my parents. Not a single person asked me about them. I thought that was odd. There must have been 100 people in attendance. The party went on all afternoon and included a huge barbecue dinner. Everyone was stuffed. I received numerous gifts and dozens of cards loaded with money. I thanked everyone for their kindness and generosity. I was the life of the party and kept everyone in stitches laughing at my jokes and antics. Perhaps I should consider a career in entertainment. When my parents finally returned home from Washington, D.C., Dad called me outside to unload their car. It was then that I saw another vehicle parked there. Mom and Dad were beaming as he handed me the keys. "It's all yours, son. This Nissan Versa is only 3 years old, so much of its depreciation has already occurred. It's safe and reliable and should hold its value well. We hope you enjoy it, son. Happy graduation. The smallest Zephyr would have blown me over. It wasn't even new. A 3-year-old used white Nissan Versa? Really? That was the best they could do for me? The paint was scuffed and scratched in several places. Now I'm not knocking the car by any means. It looked drivable. But compared to the 90 grand custom car Brandon received last year, I was hoping for a little something more than the 13 grand used car they were giving me. He graduated with a 2.4 GPA while I earned a 3.8. In what world is this fair? I couldn't help it. Tears pooled in my eyes and ran down my cheeks. Mom hugged me. "Oh, Quinn, honey, we can see that you're choked up after receiving such a nice graduation present. No other thanks are needed. Your father will bring our bags inside. Why don't you take it for a drive now and show it off to your little friends? Oh, and don't forget, starting tomorrow, your grandpa expects you to be at the farm for the summer. I'll go pack your suitcase while you're out taking a joyride in your new car." I said nothing, not even thank you. Mine weren't tears of joy, as she surmised. They were tears of humiliation and disappointment. Never had the reality of their favoritism toward Bandon been so starkly presented as was demonstrated that day. I don't want to disappoint Grandpa, Mom, so I'll go ahead and pack my suitcase now and get going this afternoon. I'm sure you two could use some rest after your trip. I don't need to test drive the car first. I'm pretty sure it will get me to Grandpa's farm without breaking down. Mom furrowed her brow, unsure how to take my comment. It didn't matter. I was sure they'd rather me be gone today than wait until tomorrow. But your father and I wanted to take you out to eat at the Golden Corral to celebrate your graduation since we missed it. Just the three of us. Another slap in the face. Just my parents and me at the Golden Corral versus Brandon's 100-plus party at the VFW hall? Am I not their child too? Did someone just abandon me on their doorstep? That might have made sense, but I've seen my birth certificate. No need to go to all that trouble just for me, Mom. Grandpa took me out to eat on my graduation day, so it's already been celebrated. I'll get packed quickly and be gone before you know it. Mom again furrowed her brow at my rejection of going out with them. Well, if you've got your mind set on getting out there sooner, we don't want to stand in your way. Your father and I have discussed where we think best for you to go to school this fall. We'll talk more about it at summer's end when you return. After the disappointing car gift, I had no reason to hope of being sent to GWU with Brandon to pursue a BA degree. I pushed all hopes to the back of my mind to avoid thinking about another letdown. Though I arrived early, Grandpa was elated to see me. He was much more of a loving parent to me than Mom and Dad combined. Not only that, but I couldn't wait to catch up with Louisa if I could catch her. Her running skills had improved even more. She was the star of her school's track team and had won many trophies. Sometimes she'd let me win a foot race to assuage my ego. She was the kindest girl I had ever met. We saddled up and were soon roaming the many fields of the farm. That summer was one of the best of my life. I don't think I drove my Nissan a single time over the summer. Grandpa insisted that I drive his Cadillac anywhere I needed to go. After Juan's admonition, I played it straight with Louisa. I told her of her father's concerns, and she disappointedly understood. We both avowed to be each other's besties regardless of whether or not we could eventually marry, but we did discuss what we valued in a potential mate. There was no doubt we loved each other, but recognized the limitations we both faced. There was an abandoned quarry about 15 minutes from the farm. Everyone in high school and college had been there to party and make out. The owners got wind of the activity and pumped the water out at regular intervals to prevent its popularity as a swimming hole. They didn't want liability for drowning incidents. I took Louisa there more than once for a picnic. All of the farm hands worked their hearts out for me that summer. Grandpa asked me what I had said to them to motivate them to such an extent. Productivity on the farm had increased by nearly 20%. I told him that I merely treated them as I would like to be treated myself. His knowing smile and pat on my back were reward enough. I had pleased my grandpa. I didn't realize how much about life I was learning from this amazing man without taking a single class. At summer's end, I returned home. Brandon was there, of course, preparing to leave for his second year at GWU. After he said his goodbyes and headed down the road in his impressive performance car, Mom and Dad finally sat me down for a talk. Quinn, your mother and I have given a lot of thought about your continuing education, my father began. You've expressed your desire to follow in your brother's footsteps and join him at GWU. Your mother and I fear that you may be setting your sights a bit too high, and think it best that you start off a bit simpler before jumping off the deep end. What do you mean, Dad? Didn't you see my report cards? I made much better grades than Brandon. There's no way I wouldn't be able to do as well, if not better than him at GWU. Quinn, don't you think it's a bit arrogant to point out the differences in your grades? You don't need to put your brother down to try to make yourself look better. It's not very becoming, and quite honestly, I'm disappointed that you even brought it up. There's much more to life than just making decent grades. Your brother has other qualities that will carry him far in life, qualities that you, quite frankly, don't possess. That's why he is where he is. Your mother and I have enrolled you in Grandview Community College. It's local, only 15 minutes from here, so you can drive to your classes every day and return home where you'll be safe and sound to do your homework. Community college? Really? That's the vision you and Mom have for me? They don't even offer 4-year degrees. The best they have to offer is 2-year associate degrees in a very limited range of programs. I hear they have a great 2-year associate degree program in sewing and fashion design. Is that what you had in mind for me? No need to get snippy with me, Quinn. They also have an excellent program for dental hygienists. What about that? Teeth cleaning? Your lofty career aspirations are for me as for me to clean teeth? Don't knock the school, Quinn. They offer a great starter program toward becoming a nurse. So you're saying you're allowing me the choice in what kind of feminine classes I can take? Mom and Dad looked at each other before he continued. People from all walks of life take those courses, Quinn, not just women. Look, we want nothing but the best for you. We'd prefer that you look seriously at becoming a dental hygienist, or even a nurse if you believe you manage it. We've established an account with Grandview that will cover any courses of study you may be interested in for the full 2 years. Here's a brochure for you to review. You might be surprised once you see everything they have to offer. My head was spinning. Like Brandon, my long-range plans are to come work for you at the plant, Dad. That's the only career I've ever contemplated, to be honest. The courses you suggest I take would steer me away from working there. Are you saying that you don't want me working with you? Am I not good enough? No, Quinn, that's not it at all. Of course you're good enough. Look at it like this. If you start with me at the plant, you'll most likely start at the bottom, and it may take you many years to work your way up. It'll be long days of hard work, Quinn, and with someone of your delicate constitution, your mother and I aren't sure that would be the best fit for you. Delicate constitution? Face the facts, Quinn, my mother chimed. You don't have the same physical constitution as your brother. No one expects you to compete against him. It wouldn't be a fair fight. Life is not about everything being fair and equal from every person's perspective. It's just life. We all play our hand from the cards we're dealt. Give Grandview a chance, please, sweetie. I silently walked away from them and shut my bedroom door to keep my head from exploding. So I'm just an inferior specimen to them, huh? At least I'm clear about where I stand in their eyes. I did look through the brochure to see if there was any program at all that might interest me. There wasn't, so I looked to their home page online for a comprehensive listing of all available courses. In their academic programs, they were offering a brand new course program for an associate degree in mechanical engineering technology, AS. I bet Dad didn't know about this one. I immediately signed up for the program online and saw that it was nearly full. This might be the only program offered where I might not be the only student not wearing a dress. I decided to not tell my parents what program I was taking. After all, I wouldn't want them worrying about my delicate constitution. I applied myself diligently to the coursework. The comprehensive program covered the basics of multiple mechanical disciplines. I found it fascinating. I had visited Dad's plant many times and had seen many of the types of machines and mechanical principles employed there. My first semester in the community college was flying by. I was flourishing. Even the atmosphere at home was much better for me with Brandon's absence. About halfway through my first year, I was seated in the cafeteria having lunch with about 20 friends. I was very gregarious and made friends easily. We were often asked to be quieter because of the constant laughter erupting from our group. I still wasn't dating other than the group date forays we often took together. Grandview's enrollment was 80% female and our group was representative. Suddenly in walked a gorgeous woman, and she seemed to be heading my way. She stopped, standing right between my chair and Kelly's, who was one of the sweetest girls in our group. Excuse me, everyone here seems to be having the best time, so this seems to be the place to be. Would you mind terribly if I joined your group? I don't know many people here yet and would love to make new friends. Her voice was that of an angel. To me, she appeared to be a golden blonde version of pop superstar Selena Gomez. She was adorably cute and beautiful at the same time. Her infectious manner immediately drew everyone in, including me. Sure, Kelly replied. There's always room for one more. Quinn, why don't you scoot over just a bit and I'll do the same. Kelly slid over an empty chair between us, encouraging the new transfer student to take her place among us. Why, thank you so much. I'm Faye Dunham. I'm usually nervous about making new friends, but somehow I managed the courage to ask if I could join you. And that's how Faye Dunham effortlessly wandered into my life. Everyone else in the group loved her personality. She had a knack for asking just the right questions, proving her interest in others, and was immediately adopted. Even though Faye was enrolled in the dental hygienist program, she became ubiquitous after that first cafeteria meeting. Although we only shared 2 classes, English and math, she would mysteriously appear at my side as I made my way to my other classes unrelated to hers. I was no fool. Her attraction to me was evident, and every guy in the school, including me, was attracted to her. There's something infectious when you learn of another person's interest in you, especially if they're stunning. She joined our group dates for a couple of weeks, but always remained close by my side as if she was claiming me as part of her territory. She never acted jealous of me interacting with the other girls, but everyone could see that she wanted us to become an item. When I finally asked her out on a one-on-one date, she eagerly agreed. Everywhere we went, other guys' eyes followed her every move, and even a few hit on her in front of me, but she politely rebuffed their advances while leaving their egos still intact. Faye was the same height as me, 5 feet 6 inches, but never wore heels a single time. It was as if she instinctively considered my self-esteem as a man. There were many feminist ladies peppered throughout the campus that didn't share her view on traditional relationships. That never bothered Faye. She was always comfortable in her own skin, and what beautiful skin it was, too. At times I wondered why she showed such interest in me, but didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. My parents adored her. For some reason, the fact that she was not from money was not the issue it had been with Jenny. It was perplexing, but I long since abandoned any hope of ever figuring my parents out. I aced all of my exams and was on the dean's list the entire school year. When summer came, Grandpa, once again, requested my assistance. I realized that this may be the last year that I would be able to help him over the summer, as once I graduated next year, I would be going to work full-time and no longer have the freedom my youth afforded me. However, every weekend I took Faye out on a date. On top of that, we talked on the phone nearly every day. She spent a lot of time at my parents' place. It was as if they had already accepted her as a full-fledged member of the family. Louisa was happy for me to have found someone serious to potentially become an important part of my life. Faye may now be the love of my life, but Louisa will always be my very best friend. The strangest aspect of my life now was the dramatic change in my brother's behavior. Upon his return for the summer, he made a huge gesture, giving me a sincere and contrite apology for how he had treated me over the years. Something must have happened at college because he seemed to be a changed man. It was as if the seed of hope was breaking through the soil and into the light. Faye and I double-dated with Brandon and his flavor of the week a few times. He was always congenial and respectful toward me. I looked for any signs that Faye developed eyes for him, but she remained focused totally on me. Brandon never made any inappropriate comments toward her either. He seemed to be a new man, and I was glad of it. Brian and April tied the knot that summer, and he asked me to be his groomsman. Faye went as my +1. Although I didn't ask, April offered that Jenny was going to an out-of-state university, so I didn't expect to run into her, nor did I care to. Let sleeping dogs lie. At summer's end, Brandon returned to GWU and me to GCC. We'd buried the hatchet. I looked forward to absorbing as much as I could glean from the coursework. I remained on the dean's list again throughout the year, and was inducted into the National Honor Society. Faye was my constant companion on campus every chance she could work it out. Between Christmas and New Year's, I popped the question, and she enthusiastically agreed to be my wife. We discovered that we were as sexually compatible as a couple could be. It was as if we were born to ring each other's bells. We agreed upon a mid-July wedding. When my graduation day rolled around, Brandon was still taking his exams, so he was unable to attend. But Mom and Dad, as well as Grandpa and his whole contingent, were there to cheer me on. I was tickled pink to have achieved that milestone. Grandpa insisted on holding my graduation celebration at his farm once again, and it was very well attended. It was a happy time in my life. I pulled Dad aside and talked with him a bit about starting work at the paint plant. I was looking forward to making my mark on the world. Quinn, I'm still unsure if working there is the best thing for your long-term future, but I won't stand in your way. If you're certain that's what you want to do, I'll speak to the department heads this week and see where the greatest need is that you may be a good fit for. Well, since I have this degree in mechanical engineering now, associate degree, my father corrected. Yes, since I have this associate degree in mechanical engineering and I graduated with honors as everyone could see, I'm anxious to put my new skills to work and help you with the business any way I can. Okay, Quinn. I'm disappointed that you have set your sights on work that you may not be suited for. But if that's what you truly want, I'll let you know what your options are with Donner Paints so you can make an informed decision. I promise you won't be sorry, Dad. You'll see. A week later, Dad and Mom came into my room with the information I'd asked for. Mom began, "Sweetie, is there nothing we can say to get you to change your mind about working at the plant? Your dad tells me that it's awfully hard and monotonous work. You could get hurt easily, and your father and I would never forgive ourselves if something bad happened to you while trying to fit in where you don't belong." "I'm sure, Mom. If I ever change my mind, I'll let you know. But for now, there's nowhere else I'd rather be than working alongside my family." Dad advised, "Quinn, I think you're crazy for even considering working for Donner Paints. I've got a bet with your mother that you won't even last a year there. You'll have to start at the bottom and work your way up. I can't allow anyone to think that you get special treatment or privileges just because you're related to me. If anything, it will be harder for you because of our relationship. There are 10 positions you'll need to work through to even get a crack at any kind of management job. You'll work approximately 16 to 18 months in each one before moving on to the next. Your starting wage will be $15.00 per hour. At each move up the ladder, your pay will increase by $1 per hour. You will start loading labels into the machine working on the conveyor line. The labels are automatically applied to the paint cans as they come off the line. Your job will be to make sure the line never shuts down because you can't keep up. It saddened me that my 2-year degree didn't afford me a better starting opportunity, but I asked for this, so I needed to buckle down and jump in with both feet without complaint. "Fine," I agreed as I shook Dad's hand, sealing the deal. "I'll be there bright and early Monday morning to get started." "Instead of jumping in so soon, why don't you wait until after returning from your honeymoon after the wedding? It wouldn't look good for you to ask off so soon after starting work." "That makes perfect sense. Thanks, Dad and Mom." The wedding went off without a hitch. Faye's parents couldn't afford the full expense of the wedding she wanted. My parents happily chipped in whatever funds were needed to make up the difference. I was shocked to see them being so helpful with our life journey together. Brandon proudly served as one of my groomsmen. My grandfather gifted us with a 2-week Caribbean cruise for our honeymoon. It was a luxurious affair. I'd never been happier in all of my life. After we returned, Faye started work at Peterson Orthodontia as an oral hygienist. It's more tedious cleaning teeth through and around braces, but the pay is more than twice what I was bringing in. They started her at $28, $50 per hour compared to my paltry $15.00 hourly. But our combined incomes put us at $90 grand per year. She said our disparate incomes did not bother her in the slightest, as long as we were together. We were able to purchase a decent starter home in a suburb between both of our jobs with an affordable $1,800, $00 monthly mortgage payment. Faye had taken out a student loan to get her degree, so we had to also begin paying that back. I began cutting my teeth on the labeling process at the plant. I had to stay on my toes to keep up with the line. Dad was right. It was tedious and monotonous work. After 3 months there, everyone near me on the line was exceptionally friendly. They'd expected me to be arrogant or condescending. They discovered how open, honest, and funny I was to be around. I was one of the gang and was treated with their respect. I came home tired at the end of every day, but Faye always managed to rev my motor up until we fell asleep exhausted after our frequent sex sessions. I was truly a lucky man. However, the more I worked on hand-loading the labels into the machine, my mind pictured a mechanical way to accomplish the process which would increase speed and reduce labor. I shared my ideas with Stan, my supervisor. I asked him if I could work long lunches in the maintenance area every day on my project to see if I could build my vision to save time and money. He liked me so well he didn't even ask his boss. He gave me the go-ahead and shifted another worker to my position while I was tinkering. Within 3 months, the maintenance staff was so excited about my project that they scheduled their time to integrate it into the machine while the conveyor was down next for its next major cleaning. To everyone's amazement, it operated flawlessly. The speed of automatically loading the labels into itself matched the speed of the conveyor. All I needed to do was place a pallet of labels next to the automated loader and off it went. Stan went on to explain in detail how the other processes worked on the conveyor line, but after 17 months, I was transferred to the receiving department and received my dollar increase. At about this same time, Faye announced that she was pregnant. We had talked about starting a family, but had not agreed upon the timing yet. Of course, we were living proof that the pill is not 100% effective. However, I was thrilled to become a dad. Our precious little daughter, Tamara Davenport, came into the world with a full set of lungs on her. Faye and I couldn't have been prouder parents. Her parents and mine were delighted with her arrival. Tamara was a dearly loved child. Brandon was graduating with his business administration degree from GWU. We all attended his graduation ceremony. After we brought Tamara home, he often brought over many stuffed animals to adorn her baby room and assumed his role perfectly as her adoring uncle. Life was good. But then came the shock. I should have anticipated it. I should have known from experience that leopards don't change their spots. Brandon was given a job within the company as Chief Administrative Officer, reporting directly to Dad. He was the head of all of the department managers. His job description was to help our company improve its performance by reviewing processes, developing new policies, and managing projects. In essence, he was my boss's boss, with a starting salary of $134,000, 4.5 times my annual income. When I confronted Dad about the contrast between Brandon and me, he simply explained that Brandon's 4-year BA degree made him eligible for the upper management position. He said also that I should be proud of my brother's accomplishments, saying I was over-expecting my ambitions within the company given my limited capabilities. He urged me to look elsewhere if I was unhappy with my present situation. I was determined to prove my worth in my father's eyes. I don't know why, but I was driven to attain parental approval. Surprisingly, Brandon never lorded his position of authority over me as I had expected him to do. On the contrary, he was always quite nice to me. I have no idea what induced his change for the better, but I warmed to his newfound maturity. We grew even closer as a result. During my time in the receiving department, storage space for pallets of powdered ingredients utilized for paint mixes was at a premium. We had plenty of large tanks in the basement to dump and hold the various latex and alkyd liquid ingredients, about 12 in all. Pallets of bags of chemicals used took up all of the floor space. After several months working in receiving, I convinced my boss to invest in a set of heavy-duty storage shelves, similar to those used in the big box stores, but even heavier duty. He had a budget surplus, so I eventually convinced him to purchase and install them along a back wall. He soon saw the wisdom of my ways and convinced Brandon to spring for more of the shelving units. Doing so quadrupled our storage capacity and sped up production. Limitations of powdered products were no longer the controlling factor in the size of batches we could run. Again, productivity increased as a result. Next, I was moved to conveyor can loading and was now paid $17, 00 per hour. Along with 3 others, I hand-loaded the empty paint cans into the conveyor system to receive the paint product. As before, the light bulb came on in my head and I was permitted to explore the development of an automated loading system, similar in theory to my label loading modification. This was much more complicated than the label loader. It involved seeing eye robotics. I was allowed to build a prototype for the station I loaded. When it was installed, my boss had kittens over it and pleaded for the funds to build 3 more just like it. Product line efficiency was increased yet again. Faye told me how proud she was of my creative abilities. She made certain that I was well rewarded intimately every night. I was a happy camper. 18 months later, I was moved to line flushing and cleaning. After a batch of product was run, the lines had to be completely flushed and cleaned to ready them to deliver the next batch of a different paint product. It was a time-consuming process to prevent cross-contamination to ensure the highest purity and quality of the product. I asked my supervisor for permission to install a set of parallel distribution pipes. In this way, using 3-way changeover valves, the next batch of different product could be run immediately, while the contaminated lines were flushed and cleaned with the product line still running. It was a huge success. With 4 lines running simultaneously, the previous can loaders who were no longer needed shifted to line flushing on an almost continual basis. Production again was greatly improved. I loved my family life. Tamara was a handful as a toddler. But when she put her arms around my neck and told me that she loved her daddy, I melted into a puddle every time. My next position was in the filling station. I monitored and made adjustments to ensure that the correct quantities of paint were accurately delivered to each can. There wasn't a lot of improvement I could see in that department, but our production runs were now limited by our fill times. I suggested we add 4 more filling nozzles, which allowed the filling of 8 cans simultaneously instead of the original 4. Doing so on all 4 lines immensely sped up production yield for each day. Productivity rose yet again. As always, I loved working with each group and made fast friends at every station. Similar results were achieved in my positions in the mixing department, lab sample testing of raw materials and paint product quality, the maintenance department, and as a forklift operator in the shipping department. I was now earning $23.00 per hour, but over the same period, Faye's wages had also increased from $28.50 to $35.00 now. She was doing very well there and was still the primary breadwinner of our family. Tamara was now 13 years old and had me wrapped around her little finger. The only tiffs Faye and I had about money was the exorbitant amount she spent on clothing. Even though she wore scrubs over her clothes in the orthodontia office, she always purchased very expensive dresses and clothing to wear to work. She bought costly, sexy lingerie that I never saw her wear, but she just had to have. Some women have shoe fetishes. Faye's fetish was women's clothing. I couldn't counter her argument that since she earned more than me, she should be able to buy whatever she feels necessary to meet her perceived needs. That notwithstanding, she never left me with any unmet sexual needs. Some couples can get into a rut. We never seemed to do that. She was a tigress in bed. A year later, I was transferred to warehouse product distribution trucking, basically. Our plant was located within an older industrial development, and there was no room for expansion. Years ago, 3 additional large warehouse spaces had been purchased in different parts of the county, beyond city limits to avoid city property taxes. I was paid to train for and secure my commercial driver's license credentials. I would make daily runs back and forth between the plant shipping department and directed warehouse locations for the particular product I was ferrying. The paint products would then be redirected all over the country to our various vendors. We'd recently celebrated Tamara's 14th birthday, and she had a slumber party to celebrate it. Needless to say, with a house full of teenage girls, we received very little sleep that night. I had just completed a full-load run from the plant to the warehouse and dropped off the trailer to be unloaded as their time permitted. I was on my way back to the plant without a trailer when the truck engine bogged down and quit on me. It refused to restart. It was an older model, and I believed it to be a transmission failure. My boss called a towing service to haul the truck to the service center that we normally use. He sent a runner to drive me back to the plant. Since it was nearly lunchtime and I had no truck to continue driving, he told me to take the remainder of the day off with pay. Not needing to be told twice, I jumped in my car and headed home, figuring I'd make myself a bite of lunch, relax, and wait for my girls to come home to me. Our modest home has no garage, but it does have a decent-sized carport. I was puzzled to see 2 vehicles in my driveway. One belonged to my wife and the other to my brother, Brandon. I thought that perhaps he was dropping something else off at the house for Tamara, because he was always dropping by to give her things. But in the middle of a weekday, I entered my home expecting to find them in my living room or kitchen, which were near the entrance, but found no one. Rather than call out to them, I instinctively performed a quiet search due to my befuddlement. As I approached the master bedroom, I could hear the obvious sounds of intense orgasmic release from an enthusiastic amorous couple. The bedroom door was not quite closed. I could see in, but didn't think they could see me through the crack. My wife, Faye, and my brother were finishing up having sex in my bed. In hindsight, I wish I had thought to record the encounter on my cell phone, but I was so distraught and upset upon discovering this, my mind nearly went numb. This was reminiscent of him and Jenny years earlier. As many couples do after experiencing such a passionate release, they rested there on the bed and began small talk. Emotionally, I felt gutted, but my brain wanted to hear anything that was said for clues as to why this was going on behind my back. I knew that Brandon was a snake, but Faye's betrayal cut me to the quick. The 2 naked bodies were still catching their breath as my brother spoke first. I know I agreed to this, but I'm getting tired of sneaking around every time we get together to have sex. How many times have you told me you love me more than him? Don't you love me enough to leave him and marry me? Yes, of course I love you more, silly. And his dinky penis doesn't hold a candle to your big woman-pleasing wand. You have no idea how many orgasms I've faked for him, but a deal's a deal and we both made a deal and we need to stick to it. My loving wife cooed. I know, but how long do we have left? I have a huge house for us with every amenity. I hate seeing you living in squalor here with Quinn in this dump. Tamara is 14 now. When she turns 18 and heads off to college, I'll try my best to let Quinn down easily. I'll make it look as if he and I are drifting apart. After I divorce him, then I can pretend to discover you, fall in love, and will marry. Tamara will see it as a natural transition and only see you in a positive light. If she found out that you are her biological daughter before then, and learned that we betrayed Quinn, who she calls her father, she may hate you and draw closer to him. We have to play this out delicately to ensure Tamara's smooth transition of love from Quinn to you. I know, you're right. I just hate being called her uncle when in fact I'm her real father. You're worth the wait, Faye. I would have married a lesser woman long ago had I not had your love and the promise of you becoming my legal wife. Spiritually, we've always been married, but I want that piece of paper that confirms it legally. And you'll have it, sweetheart. I swear it. You have almost all of me now. All Quinn gets is leftovers and sloppy seconds. I could bear it no more. Rage filled me to overflowing. I was ready to go in there and kill them both. But then I remembered Tamara. She may not be my biological daughter, but I'm the only father she's known since birth. If I killed or even hurt them, I'd go to jail and Tamara will have lost both parents. I decided to act later when I had a cooler head. I silently backtracked to my car, left to get some lunch, and gather my thoughts. As angry as I was, tears still escaped my eyes. This was way worse than Jenny. Tamara isn't my flesh and blood daughter. No wonder he played the loving uncle. He was ingratiating himself in her life, readying her for the transition. I was about to upset their precious timetable. I threw my lunch away because I couldn't eat, even though I knew I needed to. Although I didn't want to embroil my grandpa in my family drama, he was the only one whose advice I could trust. I called and told him that Faye and I no longer wanted the same things from marriage and that we'd soon be parting ways. I asked him for a reference for a good divorce attorney without asking me any more questions for the time being. He expressed his sincere sorrow for my situation, thought for a moment, put me on hold to make a call, and connected me via a conference call with Mr. Henry Lockwood of Lockwood & Sons. They were a prestigious law firm in the city. Mr. Lockwood assured me that he would personally handle my case and represent me to the best of his ability. We made an appointment for the next day at noon. Upon Grandpa's advice, my next stop was the bank. I immediately withdrew half of the cash from both our checking and savings accounts and had my name removed from all joint accounts. The bank wanted me to open another account. I just wanted the cash for now. We had 4 credit cards, 1 in each of our names and 2 in both names. I canceled the 2 in both names after paying off a small balance that was on one of them. I returned home at my regular time. Faye was already preparing supper for the 3 of us. I went straight to Tamara's room where she was doing her homework. I gave her a loving, reassuring hug and spent my time helping her finish. She was now the only bright spot in my life. After I took a shower and changed, Faye asked me why I seemed so jittery and upset. I explained that my truck had broken down earlier, leaving me stranded for a good while before things got sorted out. I didn't want to have any confrontation with Tamara present. She seemed to accept that excuse. At bedtime that night, she made no move for sex, and I was relieved. I would never touch her intimately again. When she said, "I love you," as we laid down to sleep, I merely replied, "Good night." The next 2 nights, Faye tried to initiate sex. I said that I wasn't in the mood. She tried vigilantly to engage me in conversation about what was wrong. I merely acted despondent, which was a valid emotion. I offered no further clarification. Whether she suspected I knew something or not was immaterial. She dressed seductively. I ignored her, something I had never done before, not once. I took that Friday off from work. I left home early, giving the appearance of going to work, but returned after Faye left for her job. My first task was to change the entry locks to the house to prevent any unwanted incursions. I suspected she had given my asshole brother a key. Next, I quickly dumped all of Faye's clothing, toiletries, and personal belongings into large garbage bags and arranged them neatly outdoors on the carport. Mr. Lockwood was both fast and efficient. After my initial meeting with him, he had Faye served that morning at 10 a.m. at her work. I had no idea what her reaction would be, nor did I care. I instructed Mr. Lockwood to make sure that Faye understood that I would never talk with her except in his presence, and the presence of her attorney. It was soon obvious that she paid no attention to that instruction. After I ignored her cell phone calls, she must have called the plant to reach out to me. I feel certain that she followed up with Brandon when I was unavailable. Brandon would quickly discover from my supervisor that I had called off that day. I expected her to show up fairly soon. It was clear that I had underestimated the impact of having her served. 3 cars soon pulled up together in my driveway. It was Brandon, followed by Faye, and then my dad. Truly a family affair. I went back inside the house and locked the door. Faye tried her keys, then Brandon took his turn at the new locks to no avail. They began pounding on the door and yelling at me to let them in. I yelled back, "Shut up! Shut up, all of you! If all 3 of you will step back 20 feet away from the house, I'll step out on the porch to talk. If not, I'll call the police on you for disturbing the peace." They received the message and stepped back in unison. I nervously pressed the door open and stepped out onto the porch, prepared to make a hasty retreat should one be required. The 3 of them looked both anxious and angry. Faye started it off. "Why, Quinn? Divorce papers? Out of the blue? Embarrassing me in front of my colleagues? Haven't I been a good wife to you? What's this all about?" she argued. "Why wait, Jenny?" Faye knew that my calling her Jenny was my sarcastic way of calling out her betrayal with my brother as Jenny had done. "I'm merely helping you both by giving you exactly what you want and saving us all a lot of time." "You're talking crazy, Quinn. Both? Who both? What do you mean?" she urged. "Now that our divorce proceedings have begun, you can move in with this rotting pile of shit ex-brother of mine, marry him, and never have to fake another orgasm with me. I won't stand in your way. I've tossed all your belongings in these garbage bags. If you don't take them, the garbage man will. Now get the hell out of here, both of you motherfucking backstabbers, and don't ever grace my door again," I yelled. Brandon chimed, "After everything we've done for you, this is the thanks we get? I won't let you talk to her like that, you useless pansy." Quinn, Faye called out emphatically. "Oh my God, no. I won't ever have to talk to either of you ever again as long as I never see either of your ugly faces for the rest of my life. Take your lying, backstabbing bitch whore with you, asshole. And Dad, please tell this sack of shit that he's forever dead to me. I'm not in the habit of talking to piles of shit. Both of you disgust me. I'll despise you both until the day I die," I seethed. I stepped back inside and locked the door. The 3 of them talked heatedly among themselves for about 5 minutes, endeavoring, I supposed, to figure out how I'd come to learn of my wife's and brother's treachery. The further surprising revelation to me about this particular encounter was in what was not said. Dad never questioned a single inflammatory remark I made. I thought it telling also that they had not mentioned Tamara either. When Tamara didn't get off the bus, I figured that they had already picked her up from the school to preemptively lay claim to her. I called the school office. They confirmed that Tamara had been picked up from the school and would be homeschooled from now on. That was unexpected. Was Faye going to quit her job and homeschool her now? If so, there's only one place she would do that without access to this house, Brandon's. She would never involve her parents in her depravity. Well, now everyone knows that I'm aware of their unholy affair. They don't know how I discovered it, or that I'm aware that Tamara isn't my biological child. They may try to use her as leverage against me down the road. Now that we were technically separated, I grabbed the mattress off our bed, stood it up on its side, and began dragging it outside and around back. I tossed the mattress in the backyard. I soon returned with the box spring, followed by the headboard and footboard. I brought out a gas can from the garage, splashed about a pint of fuel all over, and lit it. It was cathartic to watch their tryst bed go up in flames. I took a long hot shower to rid myself of contamination from even touching it. I relocated the bed in the spare bedroom to the master bedroom. It was as if one dark cloud moved away from overhead. Now that the proverbial cat was out of the bag, I went ahead and canceled her cell phone service and changed the number on mine. I also altered my login and password for the phone account online so she could not use her intimate knowledge of me to access it to get my new number. The silence was golden. I wondered what kind of lies they would feed Tamara. Mr. Lockwood advised me not to verbally engage them until a custody arrangement had been agreed upon. Given the temerity of Faye and Brandon's betrayal, he advised that we go by the book and take no chances of being further manipulated. I completely agreed. I returned to the plant Monday morning, fully expecting to be fired at Brandon's insistence. Dad was waiting for me when I reported to my supervisor's office for my day's run assignments. As the COO, he has access to anyone anywhere. Besides, he wasn't my nemesis. Brandon was. "Quinn, I'd like to talk to you for a minute, please." "Sure," I tersely answered. "Quinn, I don't know what happened to cause you to take the measures you did last Friday and say those horrible things. As you can imagine, tempers have flared all weekend, and we're all pretty upset about this whole debacle. However, I want you to know that business is business, and personal issues have no place in business. I've instructed Brandon to stay away from you as much as possible and avoid interacting with you. I want you to know that even though I don't pretend to understand any of this, your job is secure as long as you continue the excellent work you have always given us. Brandon will leave you alone as long as you reciprocate. I don't want any nasty family matters becoming fodder for gossip in this plant. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," I respectfully responded. A week later, Mr. Lockwood had arranged for Faye and me to meet for mediation to discuss custody arrangements before getting to divorce issues. We were not allowed to have our respective attorneys present during mediation. It was only to be the three of us. As I was headed to the meeting room where the mediation attorney would meet with us, I saw my ex-brother seated in the lobby. He acted as if he wanted to speak to me, but I completely ignored eye contact and entered the room where Faye was already waiting. She and I were seated on opposite sides of the table, facing each other while the mediator sat at the head. Faye opened, "Hi, Quinn, you look good. Tamara and I miss you terribly. We both want you to come home." The mediator awaited my response to gauge the atmosphere of the room. I remained silent. The mediator had not yet spoken directly to me. "Thank you both for coming. My name is Sheila Gordon. I'm an attorney empowered by the court to conduct these custody mediation proceedings in an attempt to arrive at a mutually agreed-upon custody arrangement that will save time in the courts. I sense that the atmosphere between you is terse. I assure you that I've seen it all. We're not here to settle divorce or personal issues. Our sole purpose is to hammer out how 14-year-old Tamara Davenport will spend her time. In the interest of decorum, let's start with you, Faye. May I call you Faye?" Faye nodded her consent. "Thank you. Please explain to me what you would like to see in the way of custody." Faye began. "I love Quinn with all my heart. I forgive him for everything. I only want the three of us to be together again. Then he can see our daughter Tamara every day. There's no need for any custody agreement." "Faye, I realize you may still have deep feelings for Quinn, but that's not why we're here. In the pre-filed petition, as you know, he's asking for 50/50th shared custody of your daughter. Are you saying you're amenable to that? If he'd just come to his senses and allow us to return home where we belong, he could see her every day, just as I said. He's the one who kicked us out. He's the one who needs to put us back together." "I'm sorry, Faye. What you're asking is not within the domain of these proceedings. Quinn's petition requests that the two of you split Tamara's time by alternating weeks. Do you agree to let him have her for a week, and then you have your week with her and so forth and so on?" Faye became indignant. "Send my daughter away half the time? Hell no, that will never happen. It's either all or nothing, Quinn. Either you take us back as I ask, or you'll never see her again. Do you hear me? All or nothing?" She angrily iterated. "That is an unreasonable position, Faye. Let me warn you, if you cannot arrive at mutually agreeable terms for Tamara's custody during these mediation proceedings, then the court will be forced to order an arrangement that they believe to be in the best interest of the child. Terms that both of you might not be happy with, but once the judge makes a ruling, that will be the law. Now, after hearing what I just said, are you open to making Quinn a counteroffer that you can agree with? Give me something to start with, Faye. Anything." Faye sat there in stark silence. Sensing the impasse, Sheila commanded, "Here are legal notices I am serving you both. 4 weeks from now, you are both to report back here to this same room to give this a second attempt. Faye, I suggest you think long and hard about what I said. If you cannot come to an agreement here concerning Tamara's custody, then a judge will make an arbitrary ruling for you. At least here you have a say. In court, you will not. Faye angrily looked at me and spat. Get over yourself, Quinn. The only way to see Tamara again is to reunite us all and resume our life together. Why don't we both set aside our pride for her and do what's best for her? She needs both of us in her life every day, at least until she's 18. I looked at Sheila. Miss Gordon, isn't it customary that ladies go first? Please have her leave and I'll wait for 10 minutes to avoid further confrontation. I must say, Quinn, I wish all of my clients were as poised as you. Yes, Faye. Please leave now. Quinn will wait here with me for 10 minutes as a deputy escorts you to your car to leave the premises. There will be no ambushes, not on my watch. Fine, be an asshole. You never had it so good before me and you never will again. Think about that. Faye finally turned and left in a huff. The next day, Mr. Lockwood informed me of mandatory marriage counseling sessions mandated by the court. He indicated that Faye had the backing of a very high-powered attorney with strong connections to many judges. He suspected some palm greasing was going on, but could never prove it. He was unable to reduce the number of mandated sessions, 10 total, twice per week. But he did manage to wrangle us into choosing the counselor. He gave me the name of one he trusts to be fair, which was the best he could do. I was to report to the counselor tomorrow at 6 p.m. He warned me not to become belligerent, but not overly cooperative either. Now I have an idea of how a tightrope walker must feel. Brandon was again waiting in the lobby upon my arrival. He stood and acted as if he wanted to say something to me. When I again ignored him, he wisely remained mute. I have no idea why he would support Faye reconciling with me. It was baffling, to say the least. I sat as far away from Faye as possible, much to her chagrin. She tearfully pleaded her case. Her undying love for me would never be extinguished. Yada, yada, yada. She begged me to tell her what I think I know and how I found out. So I calmly recounted the whole sordid story, sparing no intimate detail. She was sobbing uncontrollably as I exited our first session. Brandon rushed to her side when he heard her cries of anguish as I left. Why? Why in the world would my rejection pain her so much when she obviously loves the asshole more? Nothing she says or does makes any sense. In all of the subsequent counseling sessions, Faye demanded physical proof of my accusations. Aside from the fact that I was an eye-ear witness, she touted my lack of audio-video recorded evidence to support my purported accusations as mere jealous speculation, an overactive imagination, or even nightmares. When I suggested that Tamara be DNA tested to determine her biological parentage, she said I was crazy and only wanted to hurt our innocent child, making her a pawn by my unfounded allegations. Needless to say, neither of us made any headway, and the counseling sessions were an abject failure. With the counseling sessions behind us, my main focus returned to Tamara. Our second and third custody mediations fared no better. All 3 attempts to break Faye's blockade proved unsuccessful. She reiterated that she wanted the 3 of us back together. That was the only way she'd ever allow me to see my daughter again. For some reason, she believed I would buckle and live with her contemptible betrayal as a trade-off to be allowed to see Tamara regularly. I will never live with Faye again, no matter the cost. I have no idea why she still suggests reuniting. The only thing that made any sense at all was that she might be thinking reconciliation would be best for Tamara's benefit, certainly not Faye's or mine. Out of the blue, Faye handed me a manila envelope containing a legal quitclaim to her portion of the house and all furnishings, as well as all jointly held cash assets. She claimed it to be proof of her sincerity, hoping it would move me toward reconciliation. It did not. Finally, Sheila, our mediator, submitted her opinion to the judge on Davenport versus Davenport custody dispute. My attorney, Mr. Lockwood, submitted a brief on my behalf in tandem with Sheila's recommendation. Faye was ordered by the court to arrange to drop off Tamara at my home every other weekend as an interim measure until the docketed court case was decided by a judge for a permanent custody arrangement until Tamara turned 18. I was happy to have received even this small amount of time with her and looked forward to our first weekend together. He issued an additional edict ordering me to start paying child support in the amount of $400. $0 per month until the permanent custody order defined otherwise. Faye and I were ordered to provide verified phone numbers to each other through our attorneys for bidirectional communication concerning the child. The numbers were to be used for no other purpose. On Friday evening at 5:59 p.m., Brandon and Faye were in his car as they reluctantly dropped off a happy Tamara. I was waiting for her outside when she ran toward me and jumped into my arms, sobbing. I was just as happy to see her. I tightly squeezed and kissed the girl I had called my daughter for 14 years. I was thrilled to see that she had not yet been poisoned against me. I was happier than I had been for quite some time. I took her out to dinner at her favorite place to go. We had a nice meal and caught up on the goings-on in our lives. She explained that my mother had been driving to Brandon's home every weekday and homeschooling her for now. She said they were afraid I'd try to take her and run. I explained that I would never try to keep her from her mother. She said she knew that and tried to tell them, but they wouldn't listen. I explained how hard I had fought to have this limited time with her. She seemed pleased to know I still loved her with all my heart. We watched a DVD movie that night, munching on popcorn and candy to lighten the mood. After the movie, Tamara dropped an unanticipated bombshell request on me. "Daddy, before the judge worked out for me to be here with you this weekend, I had already made plans to have a pool party tomorrow at my new home. It was going to be an all-day affair. I had invited 12 friends from school, both girls and guys, for some fun around the pool, grilling steaks and burgers, and to let them see where I live now. I'm so happy I got to see you today, but would you be okay with letting me still have my party? I mean, if you say no, I guess I can call them all tonight and cancel if you won't let me. Mom says it's up to you." And there it was. I only get 4 days a month with my daughter, and Faye was already influencing Tamara to even cut back on that. It saddened me to see her being manipulated like this, totally oblivious to their machinations. "Sure, honey, if that's what you'd rather do. I was hoping to spend the day with you tomorrow, just you and me, but if you had already planned this in advance—" "Oh, thank you, Daddy, you're the best," she said as she hugged my neck. "I knew you'd understand. I'll call Mom to pick me up in the morning at 8. As expected, late Saturday night during her party, I received a call from Tamara. "Daddy, the party is still in full swing. We've been having a blast. I really don't want to leave them high and dry. We may swim until midnight. This pool is so cool at night with the fancy lights and all. Is it okay if I sleep here tonight rather than driving way over there in the middle of the night just to sleep?" "Sure, sweetheart, I understand. Have fun." And I ended the call without waiting to hear her gleeful response. I don't think she cared. Why do I always get my hopes up only to have them dashed time and time again? I must be a glutton for emotional punishment. 2 weeks later, a similar circumstance presented itself. Saturday morning, Tamara excitedly came to me. "Daddy, I know this is your weekend to have me and all but my best friend Alicia. You remember her well. She's invited a few of her very best friends over for a slumber party at her house tonight. Can I go, please, Daddy?" When I looked deeply into my daughter's eyes, I saw nothing in there that wanted to be with me. I saw only the excitement of a teenage girl wanting to be popular with others of her kind. Had I lost her already? "Sure, Tamara. If that's what you'd rather do, I'm sure that would be a lot more fun for you." Did she get the hint? Not on your life. "Oh, thank you, Daddy. You're the best." And she gleefully went her way, living on the phone until she was picked up. That was the last I saw of her that weekend. 2 weeks later, I was induced to abandon all hope. "It's good to see you again, Uncle Quinn. I hope you don't mind, but Mom and my real dad tell me that I need to start calling you by your correct title now, just to keep things in proper perspective." "I see. Told you, did they?" "Yes, Uncle Quinn. Isn't it exciting? I'll be living in that mansion from now on with my real dad who gives me everything I ever dreamed of having. My real dad's going to take me car shopping next week, even though I haven't even started taking driver's ed. Yet, isn't that awesome? I love you, Tamara, but do not ever call me Uncle Quinn again. If you can't bring yourself to call me Daddy any longer, then call me Sir or Hey you, but never Uncle. Got it?" I fumed. "Dad said you might be sensitive about that. I'll try not to say it again, but Dad and Mom really insisted that I do. Let me know if it's too much to ask. I don't want to place an unbearable burden on you," I said sarcastically. She felt the sting of my response and just walked away. A few minutes later, I overheard her talking on her phone. Her door was cracked, so I stood near the opening to hear what I could. Yes, Mom. I called him Uncle Quinn just like you told me to. No, he didn't like it one bit. No, he didn't curse or call you or Dad any names. He just told me never to call him that again. But I don't want to. You should have seen him when I did it. It killed me to see the pain in his eyes. Yes, ma'am, I understand. No, I don't want to be grounded. Okay, already, I'll do it, I swear. I'll call him Uncle Quinn every time I speak to him. But you promise? Really promise? You'll take me and Alicia shopping at the mall and I can have anything I want? Okay, Mom. I'll do it. I walked away in silence as tears washed down my cheeks. The only ray of sunshine I had left in the world had been taken from me. They bought her. I'd hoped that she knew better than to fall for what they were doing. I could never compete with his money. Tamara, my only child, was lost to me. They won. I give up. I had made spaghetti for supper. It was her favorite of what few dishes I had learned to cook. We pretty much ate in silence, but I knew it was coming. She was intentionally holding off speaking so she wouldn't have to say it again. Uncle Quinn, is it okay if I go shopping with Mom on Sunday morning? She wants to take me and Alicia on a shopping spree at the mall. I'm really looking forward to it. She said she will come to pick me up in my real dad's new car. It's awesome. Wait until you see it, she said excitedly. I'll think about it, Miss Davenport. I'll give it some thought as I clean up the kitchen. I'll be happy to help clean up, Uncle Quinn. No thanks, Miss Davenport, I again tersely said. She walked away sadly, having just heard me call her Miss Davenport twice. I don't think she liked it either. After I completed a painstakingly thorough cleaning of the kitchen, I made some firm decisions. I went to her room. She looked up at me with concern in her eyes. Come with me, I have a surprise for you. A surprise for me, Uncle Quinn? What kind of surprise? Let's go for a ride, Miss Davenport, and you'll see. We jumped in my car and headed out. Neither of us said a single word during the drive. I think she wanted to avoid calling me Uncle again, nor did she wish me to refer to her as Miss. After a 20-minute drive, we arrived at our destination. But this is my real dad's house where Mom and I live now. Why are we here, Uncle Quinn? Because I don't want to stand in the way of your joy and happiness. I know you are looking forward to going shopping with your mom so much. I thought I'd give you the present of more time with her. I hope you have a wonderful weekend of blissful shopping, Tamara. Never forget, I love you, I said as I kissed her forehead. Now go on, go get an early start on your shopping. Her expression vacillated between a smile and a frown. She was clearly confused. She walked bewildered to the house, looking back at me occasionally. No one was aware that she was coming. I watched and waited until I saw her safely enter the ostentatious house. Brandon stepped outside and looked over at me as I drove off. Faye called my cell phone within 2 minutes. I turned my phone off. There was nothing more to be said. She had what she wanted, and I had my plan. Since I no longer had any reason to stick around and be humiliated on an ongoing basis, I planned to permanently remove myself from the circumstances of my discomfiture. On my way home from dropping Tamara off, I picked up a large number of heavy-duty storage boxes and began packing. Most importantly, I collected those few belongings, keepsakes, clothes, and toiletries that would serve my needs for a good while. I packed them all into a single box. Everything else that I may eventually decide to revisit at some time in the future, I packed up and sealed in carefully packaged boxes. It took me the entire weekend to go through everything that had any meaning to me, which included packing all of Tamara's belongings that remained at the house into 4 large boxes and setting them aside. Monday morning, I turned my phone back on and deleted all texts and calls from all family members without reading or listening to them. Nothing could be said to cause me to change my mind, and I didn't want to endure any more drama. While I was making my first truck run to a warehouse, I called Kendra, a realtor that I knew. She attended GCC with me and was part of my cluster of friends when we were there. She was surprised to hear from me. I told her that I wanted my home sold, lock, stock, and barrel in under 2 weeks. She claimed that would be impossible. I then reminded her that I had seen countless ads and posters from investors looking to pay cash for houses sight unseen, offering quick turnarounds. She said that was a viable option, but one that would yield the lowest return. I asked her to get me the best offer she could under the circumstances, as long as all the paperwork could be signed by a week from this coming Friday. She took all of my information and promised to get back to me ASAP. She came by that night, signed me as her client, and picked up a spare key. She said she already had several irons in the fire. Over lunch, I surfed the web looking for the lowest cost storage facility within reasonable driving distance. I located one about 20 miles away, priced 25% lower than the others I had researched. I stopped by on my way home and rented a space there as small as I felt would accommodate everything I might need to store. I could always upgrade if needed. Not knowing what the weather would be like, I reserved a decent-size U-Haul truck for Friday evening. Wednesday afternoon, my stomach began churning when I saw Dad waiting for me at the plant as I was turning in my transfer vouchers at the end of my workday. I didn't want to allow anything to disrupt my planned departure. "Hi, Quinn. How was your day?" he asked without really caring. "Good. I moved a lot of product today, just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, finishing my paperwork so I can get paid," I said flatly. "Great. I've heard nothing but good reports about you. Look, the reason I'm here is that you aren't answering your phone or responding to any texts. You've been dodging your family, Quinn. Is something going on that we should know about? We're all worried sick about you." We both knew that he didn't want any personal family business openly discussed where ubiquitous ears could start a gossip chain. I admit that I've not felt like interacting much with anyone, just work, eat, and sleep. That's my life now. "Well, I hope your outlook changes for the better on Sunday." "Why? What's happening on Sunday?" I feigned interest. "We're having the entire family over for another backyard shindig on Sunday. Everybody wants you to be there. You've always had a great time at these things. It starts at 2 p.m., and we won't take no for an answer. If Brandon and Faye plan to be there, you'll have to. I refuse to be in the same area with them." "I wish you wouldn't be that way, Quinn. But your mother and I figure that seeing them so soon would be too raw emotionally for you right now. That's why we've asked them not to come this time. They talked about taking Tamara to a theme park Sunday. Now that you know that, we expect you to be there, okay? Everyone in the family wants to see you. Don't disappoint me. It starts at 2 p.m., but you're welcome to show up earlier if you wish." I thought that it might be good to see everyone again before flying the coop. If the asshole and slut won't be there, then it might be a good experience after all. "Sure, Dad, I'll be there Sunday at 2 o'clock. On Friday, using my hand truck, I moved everything I wanted to the storage unit and locked it up. Quite a few items were remaining that I donated to charitable organizations as long as they picked them up. As far as my family members are concerned, everything seemed normal with me. After returning the rental truck, I checked my email. I had filled out a dozen online job applications for a trucking job. I have plenty of experience, all the credentials, and the desire to be away from all the drama that was sure to follow. 3 serious offers were inquiring when I could start. I informed all 3 companies that I could start Monday a week. The house was nearly empty. I didn't bother doing any painting or cleanup. It was being sold as is. I slept on an air mattress as I made the final preparations for my exit. I didn't expect to hear from anyone until Tamara's next scheduled visit. I collected our wedding album and every picture we had in the house, and during the evenings, I went through each one, cutting every one of my images completely out of them. I held on to 3 of my favorite pictures of Tamara and placed all of the reviewed and edited pictures in with Tamara's belongings. I didn't want to leave behind any targets with my face for them to spit on or play darts with. I called Grandpa to see if he would be at the family gathering on Sunday. He said he was unable to go this time because he had already arranged to look at some livestock he was considering adding to the farm. He would be gone for 3 days to attend the auction. I understood and didn't expect any problems since the 2 traders would be out of the picture. Mom hugged me forever when I arrived. When I tried to shake Dad's hand, he pulled me into a bear hug and patted my back. They both seemed sincerely happy that I was there. I joined the group and reconnected with other family and friends. The caterer had done an excellent job providing a banquet complete with all the trimmings. Mom and Dad made a big show of sandwiching me between them at the table as if I was some kind of prodigal son. After the meal, I excused myself to the restroom. Of course, I knew where it was, having grown up in that house. It was when I exited the bathroom that I was met with an unexpected shock. Dad and Brandon were waiting out of sight just outside the door. They both grabbed me. My struggle against them was fruitless. I was diminutive compared to them. I might not escape their clutches, but I could certainly make noise. The moment I began yelling, Faye quickly stretched a strip of duct tape tightly across my mouth to silence me. Apparently, she had anticipated my objection. Mom injected, "Be careful not to cover his nose. We don't want any harm to come to him." I was frog-marched to my old bedroom. No one outside would be able to hear anything said in that room. It was too distant. A DJ had already started playing music for the backyard festivities. I'm sure many were already dancing and enjoying the venue and would never miss us. As my dad strong-armed me, "Search him thoroughly, Faye, and I do mean thoroughly. Make certain that he has no recording devices of any kind nor an active cell phone." As thoroughly as Faye was intimately exploring my body under my clothes with her hands, I almost thought we were going to have sex. "He has nothing but his cell phone, and I just turned it off. He's clean," she confirmed. I noticed a heavy-duty solid oak kitchen chair positioned in the open area of the bedroom. I was unceremoniously shoved into it. As Dad and Brandon held me securely, Faye duct-taped my wrists and ankles as they were tightly pressed against the wood frame. When I had been rendered immobile, they all stepped away and looked me over. They could tell that I was not happy. Mom took charge of my ambushed abduction. Quinn, honey, I'm sorry we had to take these measures to talk to you, but you gave us no other choice. We probably have more questions than you do, but one thing is certain. You're going to hear us out and listen to everything we have to say to you. You'll be free to go after we've all said that needs to be said, but it's time you heard the whole truth. Perhaps then, you'll view things differently than you do now. None of us are ready to give up on you, no matter what you think. Every person in this room loves you more than you can imagine, and that includes Brandon and Faye. Now, what I need to know from you before getting started with what must be said is, do you plan to yell and scream at us if we take the tape off your mouth? If you can contain your anger and talk with us calmly, this will go much more easily for you. Do you promise to be good and remain calm and respectful at all times if Faye removes the tape? I reluctantly nodded my head. I figured I might manage to calmly and serenely tell the four of them to go to hell rather than be subjected to a completely one-sided conversation. Excellent, Quinn. I knew you could be reasoned with. As Faye takes the tape off, remember, if you raise your voice a single time, she will silence you once again, and you will remain that way until we're done here. Understood? I nodded again. I had expected Brandon and Faye's betrayal to continue, but I was shocked that Mom and Dad would be willing participants in this intervention if they chose to think of it that way. I decided not to speak until I had something important to convey. Calling them all disparaging names doesn't qualify as important at this moment. They looked at me expectantly. "Dad, you lied to me. You lied and said that neither of them would be here. Is that what I'm here for? More lies and deceit?" Mom became the spokesperson for the group. "Quinn, yes, we admit that we misrepresented the truth to you. You would not have come knowing that either of them would be here. You need to hear some things other than your own misguided interpretation of events. You've refused every attempt we've made to talk to you, so we were forced to make these unfortunate arrangements to compel you to hear the truth." "Whose truth, Mrs. Davenport? The backstabbing slut's truth? My asshole ex-brother's truth? Or yours and Dad's truth? You're all in cahoots together against me, 4 against 1. What about my truth, Mrs. Davenport? Does my truth count for nothing?" I said with an unnerving calm. Mom winced and pulled back at my invectives. She hadn't anticipated my boiling anger. Calling her by her married name divorced her connection as my mother, and she didn't like it. "You're just as important as any of us, Quinn. Of course, what you think counts. Why else do you think we'd go to so much trouble to get you here? If I'm equally important, why am I the only one restrained in a wooden chair? As I said, you'll be free to go after we've had our say. I give you my word," she added. "Right now, Mrs. Davenport, I hope you realize that your word means nothing to me." She looked pained to hear my remark. "That may be the case, Quinn, but every word I'm about to say is the unvarnished truth. I swear it on my life." Not wishing to delay this any further, I did not respond. "Very well. Quinn, first, I want you to know that everyone in this room loves you with all their hearts. I realize you may find that hard to believe, but you are about to learn some hard truths. Truths that you may not want to hear. Truths I never wanted you to know, but truths you now need to know to help put things in proper perspective. Here goes. You were born prematurely with low birth weight. Shortly after you were born, you were diagnosed with cryptorchidism. We had no clue what that was, but we are very familiar with it now. Cryptorchidism is the medical term for an undescended testicle. In your case, it was both. Yours were shown to be fairly high up inside you. The doctors suggested we wait a couple of months to let you gain some weight and strength, but also to see if one or both of your testicles would descend naturally. They didn't. Reluctantly, we gave permission for you to have corrective surgery to put everything where it belonged. We never told you of this because we had no clue at the time about your other situation. While the doctors were inside you to correct your gonad placements, they discovered a small remnant of an ovary that had not fully formed. Although they successfully relocated your testicles, we were told that they were not fully formed either. The doctors explained that this may result in you having a very small penis after puberty. We also learned that you may be sterile as a result and may experience gender dysphoria or gender confusion as you aged. They were unable to tell us which gender you might gravitate toward naturally as you aged. This was shocking news to me. I was stunned. Why was I never told of this? Why did you or Dad never say anything about it? I'm getting to that, Quinn. Your father always wanted a boy. That's why he gave Brandon his name. I, in turn, always wanted a girl. In essence, we felt the doctors were telling us that you could go either way. Not knowing what your natural inclination would be, your father and I argued extensively, but he finally agreed to let me try raising you as the daughter I always wanted. As a result of complications from your birth, I ended up having a hysterectomy, which ended our prospects of any more children. You were my only hope for a daughter. Daughter? I murmured in shocking disbelief. That's right, Quinn. You may not recall the memories of your early years as my daughter. Your name fits perfectly with the narrative. We have always avoided the use of the words son or daughter with you after you chose the role of male for yourself, but in the beginning, you were the daughter I always wanted. I happily dressed you in the cutest dresses and feminine baby gowns. You were the most adorable daughter I could imagine. When you were being potty trained, we encouraged you not to soil your big girl panties. Vague, repressed memories began to trickle their way to the surface in my mind. You seemed to love your new panties, and I reveled at your acceptance. We purchased many Barbie dolls, Ken dolls, and tons of Barbie accessories that were left lying around the house. You and I played with them often during that time. Barbie and Ken dolls are sitting on that shelf over there here in your room to this very day. But you always told me they were decorative and I wasn't allowed to throw them away. I wanted them to remain as a reminder in case you ever gravitated back to that side of yourself. You were such a joy back then, proudly wearing dresses everywhere we went, up until you were 5 years old. It was then I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was in a hurry one evening and for the first time put you and Brandon in the tub together for your baths. It was the very first time that he had ever seen you stark naked. You both ran around the house together in nothing but your underwear for hours on end for several years, but he never questioned his sister wearing panties while he wore little boy briefs. However, in the bathtub that day, when he saw you had the same boy parts as he did, then he began to ask everyone, especially you, why you dressed as a little girl and he, a boy. Brandon was relentless and told everyone around that you were the same as him, but you wore girls' dresses anyway. Your father tried to stop him. He punished your brother multiple times to get him to quit. Brandon rubbed his ass with his hand. It still stings to this day, he chuckled. Anyway, the damage had been done. You suddenly rejected everything feminine. You had the most beautiful long hair I'd ever seen on a child. You took a pair of scissors and nearly skinned your head bald to get rid of it. It killed me to see your long, beautiful locks gone. I'd dress you in panties and a dress, and you'd strip and run around the house naked instead. You demanded boy clothes like your brother. For some reason, you wanted to be just like him, rather than the daughter I longed for you to be. Even in public, if I ever took you out dressed as a girl, you'd strip and embarrass me in front of anyone, regardless of the circumstances. I realized I was losing the battle. I finally compromised by buying you girls' clothing that resembled boy clothes. The boys' Fruit of the Loom underwear was real enough, but the pants you wore to school every day were always girls' pants without flowery prints. Your shirts consisted of plain girls' blouses. I always buttoned them up for you so you'd never realize they buttoned backward from your brother's shirts. I let you wear colorful shirts during the summer. That's the way it went up until the 5th grade. I always insisted on keeping dresses in your closet and girls' panties in your underwear drawer. I wanted them continuously available to you even if you only dressed in them in the privacy of your own room. But you told me those dresses and underwear were kept in my room just in case one of our visiting cousins had an accident and needed a change of clothes, I recalled. I know I told you that, Quinn, but the truth was they were yours. They were always yours. You never noticed, I'm sure, but you didn't realize that as you grew, so did those dresses in your closet and panty sizes in your drawer. Regardless of how old you were, every dress in that closet and piece of girls' underwear in your drawer would always fit you perfectly. I saw to that personally. Oh, you'd push the dresses to the side or to the back of your closet, but every afternoon when you returned home from school, there they were, front and center, back where they belonged. But it was when you were 10 years old in 4th grade that I took another shot at getting you back as my daughter. I don't remember anything like that happening in the 4th grade. What are you talking about? I inquired. I could tell that you were in the beginning stages of puberty. I wanted to grab onto any chance that I could to reclaim you as my daughter. I had a very close friend, my former college roommate, Dr. Edith Bentley, who is a well-respected psychiatrist/therapist. She was in a position to prescribe the regimen that I sought for you, and she is also very inclined to help those who desire to transition. I talked her into subjecting you to a single interview. I gave her a list of 3 and only 3 questions to ask you. She looked them over and told me that if you honestly answered yes to all 3, then she would accommodate my request as your parent who knew you better than anyone and had your best interest at heart. She told me that she was probably the only psychiatrist in the country that would do this for me, but after all, she trusted me implicitly. Her one objection that I was unable to overcome was my being there. I was not permitted to be in the room when she questioned you. She did not want my presence to impact the candor of your responses in any way. I was puzzled. I'm not sure I remember meeting her. What were the questions? I remember them well because I wrote them for her to use, and she agreed that your responses would be sufficient to warrant receiving her backing. The questions were: 1. Quinn, please answer yes or no, nothing else. Answer honestly and truthfully. Have you worn girls' dresses and panties for multiple years? 2. Did you play Barbie and Ken dolls with your mother for multiple years? 3. Right now, at this very moment, are there girls' dresses in your bedroom closet, girls' underwear in your bedroom dresser, and at least 1 set of Barbie and Ken dolls in your bedroom, the one you sleep in? And I said yes to all 3, didn't I? I asked sheepishly. Yes, you did, Quinn. Even though you hadn't worn dresses or played with dolls in years, you remembered going through that period for multiple years in your past. I was so happy you were completely honest with her, but she later told me what sealed the deal for her was your clothing. When you went into her office, you were wearing a girl's blouse and girl's pants. She was certain of it because her daughter had the exact same outfit. She diagnosed you with gender dysphoria as a confused male who secretly desired to transition into a female. Because you weren't of age, your father and I had to consent to your medical treatment. Dr. Bentley prescribed puberty blockers as annual implants under your skin to suppress your body's release of testosterone. After 2 months on the puberty blockers, she prescribed pills for your estrogen treatment, which is a feminizing hormone that blocks the action of testosterone. It prevented voice deepening, limited the growth of your genitalia, gave you the start of breasts, likely rendered you permanently infertile, gave you softer, less oily skin, smaller testicles, also called testicular atrophy, reduced muscle mass, more body fat, which resulted in weight gain, and less facial and body hair, all of which happened between 3 months to 3 years of you being on the program. You what? I remembered, and caught myself, trying to contain my rage. You put me on puberty blockers, chemically castrated me, and fed me estrogen without my knowledge or consent? I can't believe this. How could you do that to your own son? I never saw shithead Brandon get any makeovers. Why me? Why didn't you ever talk to me or tell me? Why was this all done behind my back? Does every member of my family hate me that much? You've got it all wrong, Quinn. Nothing could be further from the truth. You are loved beyond measure. Don't you see? Everything we did was out of pure love for you in hopes of you becoming all that you were meant to be. We were merely trying to help jumpstart the process. If Brandon hadn't screwed everything up, you'd be outside in the backyard now with all of the family, happily living your role as our daughter with a wonderful life ahead of you. But despite everything we tried to do to help you, you fought us at every turn. By the middle of your junior high school years, we finally gave up on the treatments or surgical considerations. All they seemed to do, besides the obvious physical changes, was make you irritable and temperamental. Mrs. Davenport, I'm sure you meant well and had nothing but the best motivation for everything you did. I hated every moment of it, but all that's in the past. How in the world does any of this have anything to do with my backstabbing slut wife and asshole ex-brother? I wish you would stop calling them horrible names, Quinn. It's not very becoming, and it doesn't accomplish a thing. I don't want to have to ask Faye to silence you again, nor do I think it would be helpful. I understand, Mrs. Davenport. Please accept my apology. Faye and Brandon are nothing less than the purest disciples of the Bible. I bet they walk on water every day. We should all be worshiping at their feet. Please continue to regale the myriad of ways they have improved my life, I said with dripping sarcasm. Your sardonic wit, though intended to cut, is closer to the truth than you think, Quinn. There's even more that you don't yet know. I'm sorry. What you're about to learn may hurt the most, my concerned mother continued. I couldn't imagine how anything else could hurt me worse than everything I now knew. All I know is that I wanted to get out of this place as soon as possible. I realized that talking with them only slows things down. Just get it over with, whatever it is, I appealed. Sweetie, I know that you didn't want to meet with your beautiful wife, Faye, or your brother Brandon anytime soon, but we figured that it would be best for you in the long run if we just ripped the Band-Aid off in one go. Once you hear the rest, you'll understand. Again, I say, Quinn, everyone in this room loves you more than you could ever know. By the time you finished junior high school, I had given up on the prospect of you embracing your role as my daughter. Your recalcitrance was relentless, so our focus turned to help you achieve happiness as the male you seemed determined to become. We felt we had to look out for you even more as the fairer of our two children. You had no idea that you had taken puberty blockers or estrogen supplements for years. You thought I was giving you vitamins every day. You may have had the mindset of a male, but you had most of the body of a female. Mom continued, it was too late to turn you back physically. We had to work with what you had become. We strove to protect you and encourage you to be mindful of your delicate condition, the condition of which you were emotionally unaware. When you reached high school and began dating Jenny, we thought she was a nice girl, but we were unsure if we could control her. After numerous conversations your father and I had with her over the time you dated her, we concluded that she was too much of a wild card to become your wife. She might have caused you more harm than good. Then, when we became aware of your imminent proposal, we knew we had to do something to make you set her aside. That's where Brandon came in. We asked him to seduce her. Our plan was to have her fall in love with him and break up with you herself, but it was a stroke of luck that you caught them when you did. When you caught them at that club, that wasn't the first time they were together, but it was the first time you caught them. Your brother truly liked and respected Jenny, but he loved you more, and seduced her as we asked, solely for your long-term benefit. Of course, he dropped her right after you broke it off with her. I sat there stoically and silently. A tear ran down my cheek as I realized how deep and pervasive all of my family had repeatedly betrayed me. Jenny, I truly loved that girl. They set her up to ruin her for me simply because she was on my side and not theirs. After you graduated, we sent you to Grandview Community College in hopes of you adopting a career more suitable to your inferior male body than working at the plant. We tried our best to steer you into a feminine career that we knew you could handle. We allowed you to take engineering courses against our better judgment. We wanted above all for you to be happy, Quinn. In hindsight, had you listened to us and gone with the dental hygiene program, you'd be making the same or more than your wife does instead of her becoming the primary breadwinner. You refused to listen to reason, so we allowed you to work at the plant. As you can see, that hasn't taken you very far in a career even after all these years. During the summer after you graduated high school while you were at your grandpa's farm, your brother met and dated Faye. We fell in love with her quickly after he brought her here for us to meet. It was then that we had a brainstorm. What if you met her innocently through GCC, fell in love, married, had a child with her, and lived many happy years as a man and wife? Faye and your brother had already fallen in love before you ever met her, but they both could appreciate the bigger picture. Brandon felt so guilty for robbing me of my daughter. He was willing to make nearly any sacrifice for you, to make it up to us both. He decided he'd share Faye with you and let you live your dream as a male. You never would have landed a beauty like her, but we made that happen for you. You were sterile, so you never could have fathered a child. So your brother stepped in and gave you a baby to call your own. Yes, they were in love. They still are. They have been very discreet with their numerous trysts. You were never supposed to discover what was happening behind the scenes. Faye told her employer that she had disabling migraine headaches at fairly regular intervals. She applied for FMLA leave so that she could fake migraines, call into work, take half-days off, never get fired for it, and meet her lover Brandon as often as he could arrange to be away from the plant. After nearly a year and a half into your marriage, it became obvious that you were unable to make a baby, so Brandon stopped using condoms. That's when Tamara came into your life. The look on your face the first time you held your daughter made us all realize it was worth everything we had done to achieve your happiness. More tears ran down my face as I realized that my entire pathetic existence had been carefully mapped out by puppet masters. Quinn, you may wonder why Faye agreed to do this. We offered her $1 million to get her to persuade you to marry her, then another $1 million to successfully pass off Tamara as your child, followed by a third $1 million to remain married to you until Tamara turned 18 and became an adult. Faye could then divorce you with our blessing and marry Brandon. Tamara would then always be your daughter. Then Faye would have $3 million banked waiting for her the day Tamara turned 18. We wanted you to have a wife you knew loved you and wanted to be with you no matter what deficiencies you may have as a man. During her marriage to you, her role was to ensure that you were the happiest husband alive. Her only stipulation was to always be able to be with Brandon every time it was feasible for them to come together, which averaged 3 times a week. However, she couldn't help but fall head over heels in love with you after living with you intimately every day. Faye agrees that you have a heart as big as the sky. She is completely committed to you in every way as your wife, but she also loves Brandon, perhaps a bit more because she belonged to him first, and he is the one who put a baby in her. Don't you see? All 4 of us did everything for you, Quinn, out of pure love. Mom took a big breath after rendering my pathetic life story. It all boils down to this, Quinn. The way we see it right now, you have 3 options. Number 1 is to forgive and forget. Return to your home where you belong with Faye and Tamara until Tamara turns 18. Yes, Faye and your brother will remain intimate as always, but it will never be flaunted in your face. They will always be super discreet. That is the overall best option for you. Option number 2 is to move back home here with me and your father. You can become the daughter you were always meant to be. If you look inside your closet this very moment, you'll still find dresses that will fit you perfectly, and ladies' undies in your drawer to make you look exquisite. Just think, we could all go shopping together and buy all the nice things that ladies such as yourself like to have. If you choose this option, you will never have to work another day of your life. You will be taken care of in every way, living here with us. When your father and I pass on, we will leave you this house, paid for, as well as enough funds to last you to a ripe old age. Option number 2 is my personal favorite, she giggled. Then there's option number 3. None of the 4 of us wants that for you, Quinn. If you insist on divorcing Faye, the 3 of us will help her fight tooth and nail for full custody of Tamara. She'll let you keep your puny little house to live in abject misery for the rest of your life, cut off from all of us as your lifelines. None of us will support you in any other way. If you end up in poverty, so be it. It would be a result of the life you chose for yourself. You'd have no one to blame for your misery but you. Well, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Does anyone else have anything to add? Mom asked. Faye spoke first. Every word she said is 100% true, Quinn. I love you with deep, true, undying love. Tamara and I miss you terribly. We want to be a family with you again. I'm sure this has been a lot for you to absorb in one sitting, but we had to perform this intervention to help you see the love all around you. Please choose the first option, and let us come back where we belong so we can all be a happy family again, as we were before you exploded everything. Brandon jumped in. That's right, Quinn. No hard feelings? I still feel bad about screwing up Mom's chances of having you as her daughter. I'm fine with either option 1 or 2. I'll back you 100% either way. I've got your back, always have. Mom chimed. Thank you, kids. I'm sure that means a lot to Quinn. Now that you know the whole truth, and I swear that every word of it is factual, what do you want to do? Tell us. Tell us how we can help you get through this. We'll do whatever we can, all four of us together. What's it going to be, Quinn? All four of them stared into my eyes expectantly, as if some fount of wisdom was expected to be bubbling to the surface of my thoughts. They tried their best to read my mind. I just wanted to escape this living hell they had just put my pathetic soul through. I looked each of them square in the eyes one last time. I've been overwhelmed with information overload today. There's no way I can make an informed decision right now. I need time to think about everything I've been told today. I did as you asked. I listened to every word you had to say without raising my voice. You gave me your word that I would be released after hearing it all. I am asking you to honor your word to me now and let me go. But can't you say something? Give us a clue? Anything at all about which way you may be leaning? I've told Tamara that you may put our family back together again. Can I please tell her that her daddy might make everything better soon? We love you, Quinn. If you divorce me, it will cost me $1 million because Tamara isn't 18 yet. Take us back, Quinn. I'll split that $1 million with you. Think about it. $500,000 to spend any way you like, begged Faye. After all of the revelations that had just been disclosed, if a nuclear bomb had been dropped 100 yards away from me, I'd have been less surprised. I have no answers to give until I think about everything. Give me at least a week or two to sort things out. Please, either kill me or release me, I stated emphatically. They suddenly realized their predicament. They'd hoped to receive an immediate answer, but had agreed to release me once I listened to their presentation. Dad finally nodded to Brandon, who removed his pocket knife and sliced the duct tape, freeing my appendages. I rose from the chair, rubbed my wrists a few moments, and left Faye with this parting shot. That's all this is about, isn't it, Faye? Money. $3 million? I guess that makes you one of the highest paid whores in the country, doesn't it? You and Shithead may have bought Tamara. You can't buy me. There isn't enough money in the world. I walked away without another word. As I left the quartet of stunned traitors in my old bedroom, I thought I glimpsed someone quickly exiting the house ahead of me. I briskly walked straight to my car and left without speaking to anyone else at the gathering. Monday, I received a firm offer from Halverson Freight located 3 states away in Kentucky, and accepted their terms, accommodating my start date on the following Monday. They emailed me all the necessary forms and paperwork to fill out online. I was all set. Kendra, my realtor, had found a buyer who was willing to accept everything as is concerning the house. A cash price that was acceptable to me was agreed upon. The closing took place on Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock. I was given 1 week from the closing date to clear out. I wouldn't need it past Friday and provided the new investor with a set of keys. All money that I had on hand, as well as funds from the sale of the house, were deposited into a national online bank. Tamara was 14 and a half. She would turn 18 in 3.5 years, 42 months. My child support requirements were $400, 0 per month, $400, 0 times 42 months comes to $16,800, 0. I wrote a check for the full amount and dropped it off at my attorney's office. I also signed some other papers while I was there in anticipation of their need. I would not be around to address any further legal matters. I took Friday off as a vacation day. I rented a small utility trailer, took Tamara's boxed belongings over to my attorney's office, and dropped them off. He said he had a pickup truck he could use to deliver them when it suited his schedule. He would also drop off my child support check at the same time, one day next week. I had him tally his bill. I paid him a handsome tip for doing such a great job for me. If everything went according to plan, they would be dropping Tamara off at my residence at 6 p.m. that evening. Only then would it be revealed that I was gone. I did not feel any sense of obligation to tell any of them goodbye or where I was going. I had one last stop to make before heading out of town. I drove straight to my grandpa's farm. Grandpa wasn't there. Maria, his cook and live-in housekeeper, said he'd gone into town for a meeting. She was unsure when he'd return. When I asked her about Louisa, she winced. She lives alone in one of the tenant houses, the blue one. I thought she married. She did, Quinn. She should receive her divorce decree in a couple of weeks. Louisa fell in love with and married a new hand that came to work for your grandpa several years ago, Alejandro Martinez. He seemed a nice enough man and worked hard to prove his worth. After a couple of years into the marriage, Alejandro became very jealous and controlling. He accused Luisa constantly of infidelity, but there isn't a more honest and loyal woman on God's green earth. Evidently, he began physically abusing her. Most of her bruises could be concealed beneath her clothes, but when her father, Juan, saw her wearing sunglasses indoors, he pulled them off in suspicion. He badgered Luisa until she confessed her abuse. There was no stopping him, Quinn. He beat Alejandro to within an inch of his life. He'd have killed him if 4 men hadn't pulled him off. Alejandro pressed charges but abandoned Luisa, realizing that his life would be forfeit if he returned to the farm. So, Juan has another 6 months of his sentence left to serve. I was shocked to learn that my best friend had suffered so, and I was oblivious to it all. I should have been there for her, Maria. We drifted apart. I should have stayed in touch better. There's nothing you could have done besides marrying her that would have spared her, Quinn. It's not your fault. That bastard Alejandro knows not to ever show his face around here again. I cleaned up and rode my horse to Luisa's house while having another horse follow me with the reins. She hugged me fiercely when she saw me at her front door. Within 15 minutes, it was as if no time had passed between us. Our connection was as strong as ever. We spent the evening riding the outskirts of the farm until dusk, as I recounted the ups and downs of my life since I last saw her. She invited me for supper, and I accepted. She was even more beautiful than I had remembered. She relayed her account of the hell that Alejandro had put her through. Of course, we knew that we were both coming from bad relationships and vowed not to let a rebound relationship occur. But our friendship bond was as strong as it had ever been. Luisa and I pretended like it was another regular summer visit I was making. We rode together, rocked on her porch, held hands as we walked through the garden, and enjoyed every moment together. Although I didn't want to leave her behind, I knew I couldn't stick around for all the family drama that would soon be unfolding. Before I left, I took her into my arms and made her a promise. Luisa, you have always known me to be a man of my word. I would like for us to stay in close contact over the phone after I leave the state. But know this, one day I will return for you, and if you're available when I do, we will build a life together, one step at a time. I hope you'll wait for me. I promise it won't be too long. I didn't even get a verbal reply. She kissed me so passionately my toes curled up in my shoes and I was floored. Does that answer your question? She mused. Completely, I rejoined. We rode back to the barn together. She said she'd square away the horses so I could be on my way. One more blistering kiss and I was gone. One final detail was to call my supervisor. Carl, this is Quinn. Hey, man, did you enjoy your day off? Yes, I did. Listen, Carl, the reason I'm calling is to give you my official verbal notice of resignation. Resignation? What are you talking about, Quinn? Is there a problem? Let's just say I've decided to move on to greener pastures. Are you serious? You're quitting on me? Do Brandon and your dad know about this? They haven't said a word about it to me? Carl, I figured you could check in with them on my behalf if you feel it necessary. It's been a pleasure working with you, man. Take good care of that family of yours. You don't know how fortunate you are to have such a great family. Gotta run now. Bye. I ended the call and turned my phone off. As I was heading upstate making my way to Kentucky, Brandon and Faye drove Tamara to my house for my bi-monthly weekend visitation. As Tamara exited the car and was walking toward the house, she noticed that, uncharacteristically, I wasn't coming out to greet her as I normally did. They decided to wait and make sure she was safely inside the house. After repeated knocking, Tamara shrugged her shoulders at them. Faye and Brandon walked up to the door and knocked loudly. Receiving no response, Brandon decided to try the door. To his surprise, it was unlocked. The three of them walked in while calling my name out loud. It became immediately apparent that the house had been vacated. They checked every room. Even Tamara's room was empty, and her belongings were not there either. There was a handwritten note pinned to a wall with a set of keys hanging off it. To the new owner, here is an extra set of keys. All of the utilities have been turned off and are no longer in my name. Thank you for working with me on such a fast turnaround, Quinn Davenport. What's going on, Mom? Asked a concerned Tamara. Where's Daddy? Did he sell our house? Where is he now? I don't understand. I'll call him. She dials the number. It says his number is disconnected or no longer in service. The three of them stood there in shock and disbelief. This isn't what was supposed to happen. When I reported to work at Halverson Freight on Monday morning, they had my truck ready for pickup. It was a fairly new model with barely 6 months of road service. I would be making coast-to-coast long-distance runs, and they didn't want to have to deal with breakdowns that might interfere with guaranteed delivery times. They usually partner new recruits with a seasoned veteran for a week or two, but they were short-handed. A very gorgeous, very married secretary explained all of the procedures I would need to employ to stay in proper contact for pickups and drop-offs, as well as how to process my mileage to get paid. It was a large sleeper cab, so I was set. I would have to fit it with a dorm-size refrigerator, microwave, and TV to customize it to suit my needs. My first destination was Idaho. The comprehensive truck-stop-friendly GPS guided my way. For the next 3 months, I settled nicely into my new routine. I was required to maintain meticulous records documenting hours on the road and downtimes. They were sticklers about those details. There were several truck stops where I made friends with other truckers and especially the waitresses. I always tried to be circumspect with them. I had asked my dispatchers and people in the office to take any messages if anyone called for me, then toss them in the trash. They said no problem. Apparently, I wasn't the only employee who had severed ties with their past. I dropped off my load at a location in California. It was the end of a long day for me, so I headed to a nearby diner for a sit-down meal, rather than a TV dinner. My food had just been delivered, and I was enjoying my first bites when in walked 2 unexpected individuals. There's no way this could be a coincidence, on the other side of the country from my ex-dad and ex-brother's residences. Dressed in suits, they both sat down in the booth across from me. I was hungry and was appreciating this good meal, so I ignored them. Dad tentatively began, "God, Quinn, you have no idea how challenging it was to find you. How have you been?" I didn't even look up. It irritated Brandon that not only had I caused him to drive Tamara to an empty house that evening, but disliked that I was ignoring our father. He decided to try his luck with me. "Look, Quinn, we've come a long way just to see you. That should count for something. We wouldn't be here if we didn't care. Why did you turn your back on us and just cut and run as you did?" I figured the banter could prove amusing, so I responded, "Come to collect on Tamara's child support? My attorney was supposed to deliver a lump sum check for the whole amount in full. Did you not receive it?" I sarcastically inquired. "Do you think I care anything about your paltry child support?" "Really? Then why did you cash the check?" I chuckled. "Look, Quinn," Dad inserted, "we didn't come here to argue. We came here to make you an offer. All 5 of us miss you terribly, especially Tamara. That wasn't right what you did to her. It leaves emotional scars when a daughter is rejected by her father. She thinks it's all her fault that you left. Not only that, dozens of plant workers ask Brandon and me every day where you are and when you're coming back. We had no idea how influential you were with everyone at the plant. They all seem to think of you as their best friend or something like that. We want you back, son. We need you to come back. We're prepared to double your salary if you come back with us today. You can stay with your mom and me until you get settled again. It won't cost you a dime. You can't beat that now, can you?" "Come back?" I questioned. "Why? So you can humiliate me some more? Or betray me all over again? No thanks. I'm quite happy where I'm at, thank you." "Is that why you think we're here? You're a unique presence, son, and have made a positive impact on the morale of your co-workers. If not for us, come back for them. What if we sweetened the pot even more? How about a starting salary of 2.5 times your previous amount?" "That's nothing to sneeze at, Quinn. Think about it for a minute, please," he pleaded. They seemed desperate, and I had no idea why. However, my mind was made up. "Remember back when you 2 wrestled me into that chair and had that whore duct tape me to it? As I recall, she offered me $500,000 to take her back and let her fuck me. $500,000. If I turned down $500,000, what makes you think I'd be interested in coming back to work for the peanuts you're offering?" I was given 3 options that day. As you can see, I've chosen option number 3. I'm divorcing that whore's ass, and I don't need a stinking penny from any of you. Pay somebody else to fuck the whore. She isn't worth it to me. "Why, you damn sissy faggot!" Brandon exclaimed. Apparently, he had become offended at something I said. He moved to grab me from across the table when 2 of my fellow truckers stepped up to our table. "Is there a problem here, Quinn?" one of the truckers asked. "I don't know. Is there?" I inquired as I looked Brandon in the eye and said, It's impossible to repeal the law of retribution, and one of these days it's going to catch up with you. Come on, Brandon, Dad urged. He's obviously not ready to listen to reason. Let's get out of here. The two of them unceremoniously left the premises. I thanked my friends for their assistance. It still puzzled me why they pressed me so urgently to return. There's a piece of the puzzle I'm not seeing. Meanwhile, Louisa and I were growing closer every day, FaceTiming on our phones, even though we were thousands of miles apart. We made contact nearly every night so we could see each other while we talked. If there was another man involved in Louisa's life, I saw no evidence of it. 3 weeks later, I was in Texas under similar circumstances. After dropping off a load, I was at a luxury full-service truck stop. I had planned on a great steak dinner followed by a shower and shave as my truck was being fueled and inspected. I had just sat down at my table when I was again surprised, this time by Tamara, who grabbed my neck and hugged me fiercely. She was crying. Tears of joy? I too was happy to see her and hugged her back just as strongly. She was an attractive young lady and was garnering her share of attention in the room. "What are you doing here, Tamara? I know you didn't come to Texas all by yourself. How on earth did you find me?" I queried. "Mom and your brother are outside in a rental car, see?" She waved to the parking lot, and I saw the whore wave back with a big smile on her face. I chose not to reciprocate. "Your dad hired a PI like last time to track you down. You're on the move so much it's hard to find you since you don't stay in any one place for very long." "I see. They were wise not to come inside and let you come in alone to meet me. Honey, I'm thrilled to see you as always, but why are you here? Surely they didn't go to all this trouble just to arrange for you to visit me for a few minutes. There's got to be more to it. What gives, sweetheart?" "You're right, Daddy. But first I need to know why you sold our house and moved away. You have no idea how hurt I was to learn the hard way that you had abruptly left. Do you hate me that much, Daddy, to leave without saying a word?" She teared up. "I'll try to answer your question the best I know how, sweetheart. I could never hate you. I love you now and always will. Nothing will ever change that. I think you're old enough to understand adult matters at your age. Your mother and my brother have been lovers behind my back for our entire marriage. When I caught them having sex in our bed, I learned that not only had your mother been cheating on me the entire time, that's when I discovered that you were not my biological daughter. Their betrayal was nearly unbearable. But I fought tooth and nail for you to have joint custody. You were the only bright spot in my life. When the judge ruled I could have temporary visitation with you every other weekend, I was thrilled. At last I'd get to see my daughter again. But every single time you came over to visit, you begged me to give up our precious little time so you could go and have fun with your friends. When you called me Uncle Quinn, it nearly killed me. When I found out they were buying your love with money I didn't have, I realized I had lost you. I could never compete with what they could provide. I left so you wouldn't have to feel bad about ignoring me for them." Tamara was crying after hearing the painful truth. "But they insisted that I call you Uncle Quinn and to treat you indifferently. Mom said that if I did that enough times, it would force you to let us come back home as a family. That's what I really wanted. They both swore it would work, Daddy. They swore. They lied to you, sweetheart. They lied to me, and they lied to you. Both of them betrayed me, and now they've betrayed you. Can't you see that? Daddy, the story they told me is similar to yours, but different in a big way. They told me that you knew all along that they were lovers. They said you even watched them sometimes. They also said that because you were sterile, you asked your brother to get Mom pregnant with me for you so it would all be in the family. Mom said you had a bad day at work and took it all out on them and blew everything up. Then you kicked Mom out over it and was divorcing her, and she doesn't know why. I don't know who to believe, Daddy. I love you, and I love my real dad, too. He's been super nice to me ever since you kicked us out. I kicked your mother out because of her betrayal. I never kicked you out. They took you from me and kept you away from me as much as possible. Everything they told you about me is a big lie, honey. Not a word of it is true. You have to decide for yourself what is true. I'll still love you no matter what. Daddy, can I ask you a big, big favor? Sure, honey, what is it? Will you come back where you belong and be my daddy again? They told me to make sure you understood that you would be paid 5 times what you used to make. 5 times, Daddy. Will you? Please. You can move in with me and Mom, and the four of us will be one big happy family," she exclaimed. "They told me to tell you that you're the bestest daddy in the whole wide world, and that no one could ever take your place, ever." "They told you to tell me that, huh?" "Yes, Daddy. They also told me that I can call you Daddy again if I want to. So now I have two daddies, Daddy Quinn and Daddy Brandon." "I see," I said downtrodden. "Honey, let me ask you a question. I need an honest answer, okay?" "Of course, Daddy. I always tell the truth." "Good girl. Before I left, I gave my attorney a document that would allow Brandon to adopt you as his legal daughter. In other words, I would be asked to give up all claims to you as my daughter, and he would be your legal father from then on. The only stipulation was that my attorney was to make 100% certain that the only way that would ever happen is if you convinced him that you genuinely wanted to be adopted by Brandon, even though you clearly understood that it meant giving me up forever as your father. So now I ask you, Tamara, have you been adopted by my brother Brandon? Is he your legal father now?" She looked down at the table, averting her eyes from my gaze, and nodded. "So the only reason you're calling me Daddy right now is that they told you to, not because you view me as your father any longer, right?" She remained silent and nodded again. "Thank you, sweetheart, for telling me the truth. I still love you." I kissed her on the forehead. "Honey, I've lost my appetite." I placed two $100 bills on the table. "Dinner for you and your real parents is on me. Enjoy. Now, if you'll excuse me for a minute, I need to visit the restroom." I passed by the restroom and slipped out the side entrance, stepped up into my truck, and headed off to find a different place to eat. I had no desire to further engage the source of my pain and humiliation. I have a clean reputation in my new job, and I aim to keep it that way. Becoming involved in physical violence wouldn't look good on my employment record. 2 weeks after my encounter with Tamara, I was just finishing up a nice supper after dropping off another load. As I exited the diner, I was approached by a man in a nice suit. "Sir, may I prevail upon your time for a few minutes?" the mystery gentleman kindly asked. "And just who might you be?" I requested. "My name is unimportant. I'm requesting that you meet with my boss over in the limousine. He's very anxious to meet you. No harm will come to you, I assure you. He said to tell you that this is a meeting you do not want to miss." Perplexed at the mysterious aura of the situation, I had plenty of time to kill before retiring for the night. "Why not?" I conceded. He walked me over and opened the rear passenger door. My heart fluttered for all it was worth. "Louisa!" I cried out. "And Grandpa! I have never been happier to see two people in all my life." She hugged my neck and wouldn't let go. We had grown quite close through our calls. "What's going on, Grandpa? Why are you two here? I'm not complaining, mind you. I'm thrilled to see you both," I bellowed. The driver closed the car door once I was inside. Louisa and I unabashedly kissed before Grandpa had a chance to get a word in. He waited patiently with a smile as we reconnected. "Quinn, my boy, how have you been? You look good. Perhaps this break away from all the drama back home has been good for you." Louisa finally climbed out of my lap and eagerly held my hand in hers as she sat next to me. "I'm fine, Grandpa. I've got a good rhythm going with my job, and I'm making decent money, much more than I was getting paid at the paint factory." "I'm sure you are, my boy. That's part of what I've come to talk to you about. How did you find me? Did you use the same PI that Dad did to track me down?" "PI? No need for that. All I had to do was ask Louisa. She knows where you are at all times. She keeps pretty good tabs on her man. When I told her I was coming to see you about a matter, she said the only way she would tell me where you were is if I brought her with me." "And I'm glad you did," I exclaimed as I gave her another kiss. "What was it that you came to see me about, Grandpa?" "You might not believe this, Quinn, but I've come to ask you to return to work at Donner Paints," he said with a chuckle. "Not you, too. My ex-father and ex-brother already asked me and offered me over double my old salary to come back. Then a couple of weeks ago, Tamara, Brandon, and Faye found me again and offered me 5 times my salary to return, but nobody will say why, other than to boost company morale. And I don't buy that for a second. You're a smart man, Quinn. Manuel, why don't we go for a drive while we talk?" "Yes, sir. Anywhere in particular?" Manuel inquired. "Why don't we make a big loop, eventually ending back up here?" he requested. And off we went. "Quinn, I'm sure you have many questions, and I hope I have enough answers for you. But rather than go through a quanda session, I'd prefer that you indulge an old man and hear me out before you start asking questions. I hope to clear up many things for you. Sure, Grandpa. Anything you say. Having Louisa here with me is a blessing. Please take your time, I humorously insisted. Your grandmother and I, God rest her soul, did our best to raise your father. Because he was an only child, he became spoiled. She would allow him to get away with anything while I had a more disciplined approach. As he aged, he became more arrogant and self-serving. When he married your mother, I had hoped she might influence him to become a better man, but that never happened. After you two were born, I noticed how differently he treated his children. In the early years, I knew you as their daughter at first, then suddenly you became a tomboy or dressed as a male. Regardless of your gender, in my opinion, your father treated you poorly compared to Brandon. You seemed to be the underdog who was being held back by both of your parents. When I was apprised of the full story, I became very angry with your mother. Then I found out only recently about your hormone treatments. Grandson or granddaughter, it didn't matter. You are my grandchild, and that is what is important. The reminder of what my mom had disclosed that day at their house became fresh in my mind, angering me all over again. He could see my negative expression and continued, I know, it wasn't right. What they put you through was terrible. But what's done is done. You can't unring the bell. I asked you out to my farm every summer for 2 reasons. One was to afford you a break from your parents' atrocious behavior toward you, and the second was to allow you and me to get to know each other better and form a bond. I realize you may not have appreciated the farm at times, but it gave me a chance to see what kind of a young man you were, and if your parents had already ruined you as they did your brother. Brandon is nothing more than a cookie-cutter image of your father, even more arrogant if possible. But you, my dear boy, you were always special. I was the first one to tell you that you have a heart as big as the sky. The farm workers loved you. Juan enjoyed you taking charge when you were there because you were fair and treated others how you wanted to be treated. All great leadership qualities, Quinn. Louisa and I listened intently to his every word. When I heard through the grapevine that you wanted to work at Donner Paints, I was thrilled. You persisted in the face of your family's resistance. When I talked to your father about it, I suggested you be placed in the various stations for a year or better to learn everything there was to know about the positions and endear yourself with your co-workers. You have a knack for connecting with others on a personal level that elicits devotion and respect. What I didn't know until recently was the disparate low salary you were paid compared to your brother. I was enraged when I found out, and amazed that you'd stayed as long as you did. You might not know this, but your great-uncle was Everett Donner. He was married to my older sister. He and I started Donner Paints from scratch. After a few years, he succumbed to the bottle and alcoholism took him. I bought out his half of the company but decided not to change the name. I became the CEO and managed day-to-day operations until your father received his college degree and came to work for me. As the COO, I gave him more and more responsibility over time until I essentially allowed him free rein. I never abdicated my title as CEO but changed my focus toward the farm. My parents had a 40-acre spread when I was raised there, and I increased the acreage over time, building it up to what it is today. I prefer the simpler farm life to the hustle and bustle of the business world at the paint company. I'm sure you'll never forget that family reunion you last attended where you were restrained and emotionally browbeaten by your family. If you recall, I was out of town that weekend at a cattle auction. I suspected that something might happen that day since you had split from Faye, so I involved one of my cousins, Jerry. I tasked him with keeping an eagle eye on you, never letting you out of his sight. He followed you into the house unseen and stood outside the room where you were restrained. He quietly cracked the door open slightly and recorded the entire event on his cell phone. As you were leaving, he said he barely made it out before you did. He thinks you may have seen him. Jerry sent me a copy of the recording. I was never angrier in my life to learn all the histrionics of their debauchery against you. Yes, your mother was the instigator, but your father should have stood up for you and protected you from her. I fault him for enabling her treachery. I waited quietly in the wings to see what decision you would make. I'm proud that you stood up for yourself and removed yourself from their toxic manipulations. However, that puts things in a difficult spot for me. You see, I am still the CEO and own 100% of the stock in Donner Paints. When I discovered that you had left the state, I wanted you back. I charged your father to get you to return or there would be consequences. When his first attempt was unsuccessful, he sent Tamara, Faye, and Brandon to talk you into returning. What you may not know is they were planning to take you by force if necessary and drive you back in the trunk of their car. There were 2 other men with them in another car. When you cleverly slipped away from them, you thwarted their efforts to kidnap you. When they returned empty-handed, I felt I had no other choice. I fired your father and brother on the spot. When a good son and brother like you despises his father and brother so strongly that he refuses to return to work with them, even when tempted by a 500% pay increase, that speaks volumes about the abject failure of their leadership. I had originally planned on leaving my shares of the company to your dad when I died and hoped he would pass it on in equal shares to you and your brother when he passed on. I see now that would be a terrible mistake for the long-term future of the company. So, here's my proposition to you, Quinn. You know that company inside and out better than anyone else I can imagine. If you will return to run the company, I will make you the new COO to lead the company according to your vision. Your starting salary will be what your father had been earning plus 10%. If, after 1 year, I see the fruitful results of your leadership that I expect to see, I will then make you CEO and transfer all of my shares of stock to you. I'll retire completely and run the farm that I love so well. You'll do a great job of it, I'm certain. It's the least I can do to compensate you for the suffering you withstood growing up the way you did. If you'll accept, I've already secured you a beautiful and efficient personal assistant who is anxious to help you achieve outstanding success. She's sitting right next to you, holding your hand. There's an old saying, Quinn, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. What do you say, my boy? You in. In an instant, my life had gone from pathetic to being on top of the world. This was an opportunity of a lifetime. I had no idea that Grandpa owned Donner Paints. I'd never met a more humble man. He never made a show of his wealth. A million thoughts were running through my head. Almost as good as being offered this opportunity was having Louisa by my side. Grandpa, I don't know what to say. I'm shocked to say the least. If you have that kind of confidence in me, how can I say no? I'll do my very best for you. But can I count on you for advice from time to time? I'm certain that there are a lot of management issues that may come up, and I'd sure like to have you as my resource. Of course, my boy. For that first year, I'll be available to assist with your transition in any way I can. But I don't believe it will be as challenging as you may think. I've talked to most of the lower department managers, and they have nothing but the highest praise about you whenever your name is mentioned. And don't think I don't know about all of your inventions and other contributions you've made to plant efficiency that your brother took credit for. Think of this as a return on investment for paying your dues. You deserve it, Quinn. I looked over at the woman that I had loved for many years but was just now able to fully realize it. Louisa, are you sure you're ready to jump in this with me? It will be scary for us both. Quinn, just like Rose said to Jack in the movie Titanic, you jump, I jump, right? I'll work my ass off to learn my job, and I swear by all that's holy that you'll have the most supportive assistant the world has ever known, she said with loving devotion in her eyes. I pushed my hand out to shake his hand. Grandpa, if you're willing to bet the company on us, we're willing to give it everything we've got. You've got yourself a deal. We can't thank you enough. No thanks needed, Quinn. That's what family is supposed to be for. I'm sorry you were shortchanged with your parents, but I'm happy to be here now to correct that mistake. Manuel, take us back to where we picked up Quinn. I'm sure you'll need to turn your truck in and make a clean exit from your present job. Catch a flight from anywhere to get back home. It's a reimbursable expense. Louisa, I don't think I need to ask, but are you coming back with me, or are you returning with Quinn? You're right. It would take 10 sticks of dynamite to pry me away from his side now, she chuckled. Louisa and I consummated our love that night in the sleeper cab of my truck. Not the roomiest place to make love, but certainly one of the coziest. We were an unimaginably perfect fit. It took me 2 days to make the return run back to Kentucky and drop off my truck. I told them to let the next driver have the fridge, microwave, and TV if he or she wanted them. Louisa insisted that I move in with her on the farm just until we worked out the logistics of where we'll live and raise our family. That's right, I said we. I proposed to her without a ring, and she enthusiastically accepted. We'd marry just as soon as my divorce from Faye was finalized. Grandpa met me on my first day on the job at the plant. He made certain that the HR department was fully aware of my new status and authority within the company, second only to his. I wanted to hit the ground running. I took 3 days to become familiar with how the finances of the plant were structured so that I could make informed decisions as to the direction of the company in light of any perceived financial impacts. Louisa took to her role as a duck to water. No one got to me except through her without an appointment. This gave me uninterrupted time to plan future operations. Later in the week, I held a meeting with all the department heads who applauded me for being at the helm. I then learned that they all considered my father and Brandon arrogant bullies who cared little for anything or anyone but themselves. Knowing me as they did, they were pumped up with enthusiasm for the future. I laid out some general guidelines for efficiency goals and asked for input from all of the workers as to how we might improve in any areas. They were stunned at this request and happy to implement it. I made it clear to them all that my door was always open to them, but to please make an appointment with Louisa first or otherwise risk her wrath. They all laughed but knew I was serious at the same time. Once company logistics had been dealt with, I turned my attention to other matters. Dad, Mom, Faye, and Brandon all had desperately tried to talk with me, but Louisa managed to keep them all at bay. No one was given my private cell phone number without my approval. Grandpa had provided me a copy of the recording Jerry made at my intervention. I listened to it several times and tried to think of ways to act upon my thoughts of reprisal. Since my family members were clamoring to meet with me so desperately, I decided to go ahead and meet to let all the air out of their balloons. I asked Louisa to make reservations at a Cracker Barrel restaurant. It was a public place where foul language or raised voices wouldn't be tolerated. We had reservations for Sunday at noon. The place was packed with families and many children. The 7 of us were seated at a round table. With Louisa at my side, I was ready for anything. After our orders were placed, Mom, again being the leader of the pack, began, "It's wonderful to see you, Quinn. You brought your secretary to meet your family for lunch?" "No, I brought my fiancé with me to lunch. We're to be married once my divorce is finalized. Louisa, this is my family. Family, this is Louisa Hernandez, soon to be Davenport." Well, you move fast. It's a shame that you couldn't see your way to work things out with your wife, but I can see that you've moved on. Congratulations, you two, Faye said insincerely as she appeared stunned by my announcement. Mom and Brandon looked annoyed by Faye's remark, but ignored it. Dad took it upon himself to address the elephant in the room. "Quinn, I want to personally congratulate you on your new position at Donner Paints. I'm sure you'll be fine, though you're seriously unqualified for the role. Unfortunately, your new job as COO has come at my expense. As far as I know, you have yet to fill the position of Chief Administrative Officer. I'd like to offer my services to you in that capacity. I can help you avoid the many pitfalls I'm sure you will encounter over time. Of course, I'd expect the top pay that the position can provide, but I'm sure you'll agree that I offer more value than the job would cost the company." Brandon squirmed in his seat. Dad was talking about taking over his elder son's position. Evidently, they'd discussed and agreed upon strategy as a group before this meeting. "I appreciate your generous offer, but I haven't decided yet if I am even going to fill that position. The plant seems to be operating just fine without it, and eliminating it would be a cost-saving measure to the company," I flatly stated. Yes, every new manager wants to feel as if they're making a significant positive impact on the company's bottom line, and you're no different in that regard. I, of all people, understand that tactic all too well. However, let's not forget that you've gone from a floor worker to a truck driver to the COO of a large manufacturer. Just one innocent mistake that you make could cost the company significantly. That's why you need someone like me, who has decades of experience at the helm to help guide you along the way. Plus, I think you owe me after the underhanded way you talked your grandfather into giving me the boot and letting you take over. You must admit, that's just not right, Quinn. Think about it, Dad politely demanded. I hear what you're saying, Dad, but I fail to see how I owe you anything on a professional working level. I didn't talk Grandpa into anything. I had left the state and was on the other side of the country running away from all of you with no plans to return. Grandpa is the one who found me and persuaded me to return. He then informed me that he had instructed you to pay Brandon and me the same annual wages, yet compared to him, I was grossly underpaid the entire time I was employed while you were COO. But that's different, Quinn. Surely you have to concur that a 4-year degree in business administration from GWU warrants a much greater salary than a 2-year mechanical certificate from a local community college, he reasoned. Under normal circumstances, I'd agree with you, sir. But these were not normal circumstances, were they? For one thing, I desperately wanted to attend GWU as well, but you and Mom shot me down. I now know that it was because Mom wanted me to stick around as her daughter, but that's an excuse, not a reason. Secondly, Grandpa told me you were to pay us both the same wages regardless. I've got him on speed dial if you need to be reminded of what he said to you. Damn it, Quinn! I lost my job! My whole career has gone up in flames because of you! I've had several interviews, but no one will give me a second look. It seems a good reference has not been given when they contact HR about me. I instructed HR to pass on an assessment of your performance based upon comments from the managers who worked under you. I had nothing to do with a single comment they made. Quinn, son, please. I took out a second and third mortgage on our house and property to bankroll home improvements and phase arrangement with us on your behalf. We're falling short of our financial obligations. We won't be able to honor our commitment to Faye if you don't help me. Your grandfather has informed me that if you're able to successfully run the company for a year, he will transfer ownership of his stock directly to you. Brandon and I will be locked out in the cold from our rightful inheritance. I was counting on my birthright to bankroll our future. Without your help, we'll lose the house, and Faye won't get the $2 million she's already been promised. You're destroying all of our lives in one fell swoop, Quinn. We raised you to be better than this. Show your family some compassion, he entreated. You mean like the compassion you and Mom showed me when I was unwittingly administered puberty blockers and female hormones? Or the compassion when you gave my brother a brand new expensive Corvette performance car for his graduation present while I received a 3-year-old used Nissan Versa? How about the compassion I was shown when you grabbed me and restrained me against my will when you tried to coerce me into your demented plans for my life? That kind of compassion, Dad? He had the good sense to look away. Mom resented my impertinence. Your father and I gave you life, Quinn. We raised you to be a better person than what we see here today. Person? You simply cannot bring yourself to call me a man to this day, can you? Yes, you gave me life, but ever since that day, it seems as though you've done everything possible to extinguish who and what I am. A man. I'm a man, Mom, whether you accept it or not. What about me, Quinn? Brandon blurted. I shared the love of my life with you. I gave you my daughter for heaven's sake. Everything important to me I either shared or gave to you. I didn't hold you back as they did. It's not my fault that Dad gave you that Versa and not a car like mine. I didn't determine your rate of pay. Why are you punishing me along with them? If you hire me back in the Chief Administrative Officer position, the job I've held for years, I could help you grow the company according to your vision, Quinn. We could be the unbeatable team of the Davenport brothers, ready to take on the world. Yes, you gave me everything, ex-brother, except the truth. What you gave me was a pack of lies, which makes you a thief and a liar. You stole Jenny from me when we were engaged to be married and intentionally ruined our wonderful relationship. You stole from me an exclusive relationship with Faye, who purported to love only me. You stole the belief that I had a biological child and deceptively passed yours off as my own. You stole my thunder at work by taking credit behind my back for my efficiency improvements, claiming they were ideas that you had directed me to implement. I had no inkling you'd done that until Grandpa told me. You stole from me way more than you ever gave me, Brandon. He, too, had nothing to counter my assertions and grew quiet. Faye decided to make her plea. Quinn, honey, I want you to think about something. Think about the 15 blissful years we had as husband and wife before you discovered Brandon's involvement. Before you blew up our lives, weren't we both happy? I mean, genuinely happy? They were the best years of my life as well, Quinn. Not just yours. You may not believe that I could love you and still do what I did. You're wrong. I love you more than life itself. You ripped the heart out of my chest when you cast me aside so callously. I can't help but love you, damn it. You're too wonderful of a man not to. Listen to me, Quinn Davenport, and you listen to me good. I'll cast everything and everyone else in my life aside right now if you'll allow me to make you the happiest husband alive. I did it once before and I can do it again. It will be just you, me, and Tamara, only the three of us like it was before. I'll disown Brandon and your parents forever if you'll let me be your everything again. Please, Quinn, please, she sobbed uncontrollably. Louisa was squeezing my hand so hard I thought she would break my fingers. I could tell that she was about to explode. I patted her hand reassuringly. She relaxed, realizing that I was not being swayed by Faye's impassioned plea. What fascinated me was Brandon. How on earth could he sit still after the woman he'd conspired to be with for years had profusely professed her profound love for me was beyond me. Was this all more staging for my benefit? Faye, your betrayal hurt the most. I had become accustomed to my mom, dad, and my brother's indifference to my feelings as I was growing up. I had learned to compartmentalize their behavior and inoculate myself against it, but you were the one person from whom I should have not needed protection. You made solemn vows to me before God and a host of witnesses, vows that you never intended to keep, vows that were never kept for a single day. I've got to hand it to you. You were one of the best call girls money could buy. Yes, I was happy because I mistakenly placed my trust and faith in you and in our marriage. You didn't simply fracture my trust in you, Faye. You annihilated it. It can never be restored. Since you have lied to my face ever since the day I met you, I will never believe another word you say. Talking to me is a waste of your breath. As if on cue, a tearful Faye reluctantly nudged Tamara with her elbow and nodded at her to address me next. Daddy, I'm so sorry I pushed you away when you and Mom separated. I'm ashamed of myself for acting like a spoiled brat. I was wrong. I love you, and I never wanted anything to come between us. You're the best daddy in the whole world, and I really mean that. Our families are struggling right now trying to make ends meet. I don't want to be a burden on anyone, so I was wondering, would you please take me back and let me come live with you and be your daughter again? I promise I won't be any trouble. You'll hardly even know I'm there. I looked at my former daughter who had clearly been coached. The four villains must either be more desperate than I had previously believed to sacrificially offer her to me this way, or they were scheming to plant a spy in my camp. That was unmistakably the case, and it angered me that they were coaching her on how to manipulate me. I'm sure you mean well, Tamara, but your real parents would be devastated if you were to ever leave them. As you know, I've introduced Louisa here as my bride Tobe. When we get married, we will be working on having a family of real children, just like you are to your mom and dad. I'm sure your real parents would never part with their real daughter. You're right where you belong. I could never live with myself separating you from them. I love you too much to ever let that happen. The group of five looked at me with contempt. The only one crying honest tears was Faye. She was an enigma to me. Could she genuinely still love me in some incomprehensible way? The situation in which they all found themselves was of their own making. Grandpa had fired my dad and my brother, his flesh and blood son and grandson. He'd have never done so unless he knew it was the right thing to do. If I were to hire either of them back for any reason, it would seriously undermine Grandpa's confidence in my ability to perform the job he tasked me with. A niggling thought planted a seed in the back of my mind. We finished our meal in silence. I'm certain I would have been yelled at by them under different circumstances, but decorum spared me. After finishing our meal, I stood and took Louisa's hand in mine. Believe it or not, I'm glad we've all had this chance to air our grievances. Now that we all know where we stand, Louisa and I will take our leave. Since you're all here at my invitation, I'll take care of the check. Please take your time. Louisa, shall we? We paid the check and left them there with their thoughts. Now that we all had the chance to openly express ourselves, hopefully their future urgency to communicate with me will abate. Besides, now I have several tasks to take care of. I instructed our HR department to treat Brandon the same as my father concerning recommendations. Any calls requesting references would not be met with appealing responses. Unable to secure another high-paying position in a large business, he took a job as an assistant auto parts store manager. I wanted some serious retribution on the woman who betrayed me the most. I took 2 measures to impact her directly. First, I sent a copy of the recording Jerry made during my intervention. Faye's admission that everything said was 100% true got her fired from her job for FMLA fraud. Her employer also sent notices to all other dentists and orthodontists in the county. No one else would hire her in that field. She finally landed a job as a bank teller, but I wasn't done. On the advice of my attorney, I stopped the divorce action against Faye. Then we turned right around and filed for an annulment owing to the fraud and deception that had been perpetrated on me from the very beginning. That recording was worth its weight in gold. An annulment would be as if we had never married. She would be forced to resume her maiden name, Dunham at least, until she married Brandon. I realize it was petty, but just the aggravation I was causing her by having to go through that process made me smile. My attorney managed to arrange an initial hearing quickly. The judge had listened to the evidence but ordered verification of Tamara's paternity via DNA analysis before proceeding. I was happy to oblige. Dad remained unemployed, Mom had never worked, and Brandon had taken a huge cut in his income, yet neither had put their lavish homes up for sale. Faye's bank teller income couldn't be keeping Brandon afloat. It would be spent primarily on Tamara. I would have thought that some downsizing might have been in order for both households. Yet they still maintained their memberships in the expensive, prestigious country club to which they belonged. Something wasn't adding up. My thoughts began to crystallize. The following day, I hired a forensic accountant to analyze the company's financial records, searching for any anomalies. I instructed my staff to allow them access to any records and information that was requested. I made it clear to them that nothing was to be withheld. 2 weeks later, a comprehensive report revealed that over the past 20 years, slightly more than $7 million had been embezzled through 2 shell companies that existed only on paper. These 2 entities were presented as suppliers of raw materials used in paint manufacture. However, the materials purported to be provided were duplicates of other genuine invoices for legitimate materials received and used. Each one of the falsified bills of lading delineating the non-existent materials was signed by the same man, the head of our receiving department, Fred Rice. Fred was nearing retirement. I had always liked him and would never have suspected his involvement in anything underhanded. A thorough analysis exposed the fact that one of the shell companies was overseen by Brandon Andrew Davenport and the other by Brandon Andrew Davenport, Jr. My brother had been involved in the embezzling scheme even while he was still in high school. Dad had to be the mastermind to set everything up. Suddenly, Brandon's expensive Corvette graduation gift now made perfect sense. The falsified invoices averaged just under $30,000, 0 per month, totaling nearly $350,000, 0 per year. It was a systematic siphon that was always supported by legitimate purchase orders. When I finally presented all of the evidence to Grandpa, every I was dotted and T was crossed. I didn't want him to think I was trumping up charges for petty retribution of any kind. He told me that he had suspected that something shady was going on with the financial numbers right under his nose at the plant, but never suspected his son and grandson as the culprits. The forensic accountant laid out an impressive, easy-to-follow path for laymen to understand and explained it once again to the police department financial crimes detectives. Fred was brought in for questioning and booked after his confession. He'd been paid $2,000 per month for his part, clearing $480,000, 0 over the 20-year time frame. What was most interesting is that Fred had continued signing and processing the fake materials receipts even after Dad and Brandon had been fired. Here they were pleading poor mouth to me while they were still being remunerated like kings. Grandpa, as the CEO, sadly pressed formal charges against the 3. They were arrested, charged with felony theft, and released on low bail since the crimes they were accused of committing were non-violent. I fully expected some scathing responses from them, but I had no idea what form it might take. Louisa was prepared to deflect them should they call the office, but there wasn't a single call attempt from any of them. It was eerily unsettling. My attorney indicated that DNA results confirmed that I was not Tamara's biological father. The final annulment hearing had been docketed to take place in 3 weeks. I urgently wanted to be legally free of Faye. Louisa had taken a day off to spend visiting Juan, her father. The temp who took her place for the day was unfamiliar with my circumstances and put a call through to me from Tamara. Not wanting to air dirty laundry in front of the temp, I said nothing to her but decided to treat it as a formal call. "This is Quinn Davenport." "Hi, Tamara. How are you?" I said in an upbeat voice. Sniffling, she replied, I didn't know who else to call. A boy I know from school brought me out here to the quarry. He was getting too fresh, so I slapped him hard to discourage him. He got angry and left me out here all alone. Mom would kill me if she knew I came out here with a boy by myself. I just need a safe ride back home. You're the only one I trust to not tell on me. Would you come out here and get me? Please? Even though I knew she was not mine biologically, she still could tug at my heartstrings. What high schooler doesn't get in a fix now and then that they don't want their parents finding out about? I sympathized with her plight and was proud of her for standing up for herself. Sure, Tamara, I'll be there as soon as I can. Give me about 25 minutes. Meanwhile, if any other kids show up before I get there, just stay out of sight in the woods until I arrive. Thanks for coming to my rescue. You're the best. I'll be waiting, she advised. I informed the temp that I would be out running an errand for a while, and for her to take messages until I returned. There is a swinging gate at the quarry about 50 yards from the parking lot, where most teenagers park to make out. The parking lot itself is about 50 yards from the edge of the quarry, which is a steep drop-off to the bottom, 140 feet below. Huge boulders lined the bottom. Many rock climbers would scale the ledge to the bottom for practice in honing their skills. The chain to the gate had been cut as usual as the unwanted visitors ignored the many posted no trespassing signs. I didn't see any other vehicles present, which was as expected. I called out to Tamara and was blindsided by the response. She isn't here, Brandon said as he moved out from behind a tree. That's right, Quinn, Faye concurred as she revealed her presence as well. What? I exclaimed. If that's the case, then why are you two here? What's going on? Tamara was never here, Quinn. She made that call from school as we asked her to do. Faye and I just want to have a little talk with you and Grandpa to clear up some things and hopefully set a few things right again, Brandon said placidly. Look, all we want to do is talk, okay? Grandpa doesn't know the truth about what's going on. We want a chance to explain our side of the story. That's all this is, all right? Well, if you want to talk to him, why didn't you call him instead of dragging me out here? Grandpa isn't taking our calls because he believes we're on opposite sides thanks to you. But he'll take your call. That's why you're here. We want you to call him and ask him to come here to meet you so we can talk to you both. After we've said what we need to say, we'll leave you alone. Fair enough, Brandon said convincingly. I don't like being used like this. If you want to explain something to Grandpa, why not just send him a letter? That should work just as well. I explained. A letter is not the same as in person, and you know it. Besides, we'd never know if he would just throw it away without reading it, Brandon surmised. Look, I'm not going to get in the middle of anything between you and Grandpa. You need to work that out on your own without me. I want nothing to do with this. I'm leaving. Not so fast, Brandon advised as he pulled out a handgun from behind his back. Listen, Quinn, I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to talk to Grandpa, okay? Here, read this to him when you call him. Make it sound convincing, okay? After I've said my piece, you'll both be free to go. I swear, he expounded. I took the note from him and reviewed it. Be convincing if you know what's good for you, Brandon urged as he aimed the gun right at my head. I took my cell phone out of my pocket and dialed Grandpa's number. Hi, Grandpa, it's Quinn. Look, I'm in a bit of a bind at the moment and wonder if you'd mind giving me a hand. Brandon was listening to my side of the conversation for accuracy to the prepared script. What happened is, I'm out at the old quarry and the car is stuck. I can't get it out. Louisa is here with me and we got stuck in some mud. Can you bring your old pickup out here right quick with your chain and give us a pull? Great. See you in about 15 minutes, I confirmed before ending the call. An angry Brandon lambasted me. You were supposed to say Tamara. Why did you change it to Louisa? He raged. Think about it, Brandon. If Tamara had been here, he would have wondered why she didn't call you. He may have been suspicious as to why I would have been here with her anyway. It makes much more sense that Louisa and I would have come here together, right? I suppose so, he reluctantly agreed. Good thing for you that I happen to know that Louisa is visiting her father in jail. That'll keep her out of the way until all of this is over. And how would you know that? I inquired. Let's just say that there are a few people at the plant still loyal to Dad and me. I have inside information, he boasted. I see, I said, puzzling about who it could be. Faye turned my car around in the parking lot, giving the appearance that I was trying to leave, but the car was stuck. She left the driver's side door open and walked toward me. All right, Quinn. I don't want you trying to go heroic on me when Grandpa gets here. Faye is going to tie-wrap your wrists together. Get them good and snug, honey. He held the gun on me as she tightly bound my hands with the large cable tie. Now walk over to your car and get in the front seat. She has your keys, so you aren't going anywhere. I did as he commanded and slid behind the wheel. Now get his ankles, baby, nice and tight, Brandon ordered. Faye complied, securing my ankles together with another huge cable tie. Then she shut the car door, walked around, and slid into the passenger seat beside me. Now we wait, Brandon mused aloud. True to his word, Grandpa soon appeared in his old truck and pulled into the parking lot, seeing two people in my car. He pulled up beside me, immediately noticing Faye in the seat beside me. As he was about to speak, Brandon sneaked up and put his gun to Grandpa's head. Don't make me do it, old man. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I just want to have a chat with you and Quinn at the same time. Cooperate with me and we'll get this over with soon. Okay? Grandpa silently nodded his understanding. Okay, Faye. Secure Grandpa the same way you did Quinn. She did as instructed and took the truck keys. All right, get Quinn to hop over here and get in the truck beside Grandpa. Given no other option, I submitted to his request. After the truck door was closed and we were both restrained and seated. All right, honey. I don't want to hear any of their back talk while I'm saying my piece. Tape their mouths shut. She complied. While she was doing that, Brandon dropped down behind one of the front tires and loosened one of the hydraulic brake bleeder valves. Of course, we could not see what he was doing. After both of our mouths were silenced, Brandon began his speech. Dad and I are completely fed up with you two. You've tried to destroy our lives and we're about to have our revenge. I don't know what you said or did to get Grandpa to turn on us, Quinn, but it ends today, right here and now. You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? When Dad and I began using the plant as a cash cow, he felt it was owed him. He worked hard for many years, yet you greedily wouldn't let go of a stinking share of stock, would you, Grandpa? That's right, Quinn. Dad brought me into his plan because he knew he could never trust you, the pansy of the family, Mom's favorite daughter. Even today she dreams about the two of you frolicking around dress shopping together. He laughed mockingly. So all we did was get what was coming to us anyway. We've done things you never dreamed of. Dad and I have gone to Vegas many times to engage in high-stakes gambling. We lost most of what we had in the bank, but were treated like royalty. I've screwed more gorgeous hookers than you can imagine, and Dad has had his share of paid pussy as well. An upset Faye yelled, You had hookers? Both of you? How could you? You never told me anything about that. Oh, come on, Faye. What did you expect? Did you think I would be happy with just the 3 times a week you and I hooked up? Hell, you fucked Quinn silly every single day. I needed more than what you were able to give me. That should come as no surprise to you. You're the mother of my child. Sure, I agreed to remain single and not marry until Tamara turned 18, but I never promised to remain exclusive. Brandon turned his attention back to Grandpa. Dad and I went through money like water. We realize now that we should have socked away a chunk of it but never imagined things would turn out as they have. But there's still time to fix everything. Dad has checked. Our sources say that while you haven't signed over your shares to Quinn yet, they're earmarked to go to him in the event of your demise. He continued, Well, your demise is about to happen sooner than you planned, old man. You're both about to die. The truck brakes no longer work. Your emergency brake hasn't worked in years. The storyline will be that the two of you met here for a talk. Then the truck popped out of gear, and before you could get out, it went over the cliff, crashed on the bottom, and caught fire, killing you both. Don't worry, we'll hold grand funerals for you two. Grandpa, when you die, all shares will go to Quinn. With Quinn dying while still married to Faye, she will inherit everything. Once she has everything, we'll say that we were framed and produce records to back that claim up with our own records that will show you were blackmailing Grandpa. That way, all charges will be dropped. I'll marry Faye, and we'll have it all. That's why this has to happen before your stupid annulment takes place. A few more weeks and it will be too late. You forced my hand. I wish I could say I'll miss both of you, but we both know that's not true. Comfort yourself with this thought, Quinn. When I seduce Louisa and fuck her senseless, it will be my name she'll be screaming out in lust, not yours. Hell, I may even breed her and give your fiancé a baby as I did your wife, Faye. Brandon walked the 50 yards to the edge of the cliff where 5 plastic gallon-size used milk jugs had been filled with gasoline. He grabbed them one by one and tossed them over the edge to the bottom of the quarry. Each jug burst open upon impact, bathing the boulders below in splashed gasoline. He then lit a wadded piece of paper with a match and tossed it over the side. A thunderously loud whoosh could be heard as the gasoline ignited and caught fire, reaching upward with hungry flames. Brandon sneered as he signed our death warrants. The truck will slowly roll off the edge into the pit of fire I just set for you. With no seatbelts fastened, if you're lucky, you'll die on impact. By the time they find your charred remains and the burned-out truck, Faye and I will be picnicking and hiking with Dad and Mom at the state park. We took some pictures with them there last week. After we join them today, we'll take some more with them. Our alibi is secure. We're not even here. Tamara is the only one who doesn't have a clue what's really happening here today. We'll tell her it was a tragic accident. I can be very convincing. Grandpa and I struggled desperately against our bonds, but were unable to free ourselves. Brandon and Faye each had a large cloth that they doused with chloroform. Simultaneously, they placed the chloroform-laden cloths over our noses. We held our breath as long as we could, but soon succumbed to the anesthetic effects. Grandpa fruitlessly blew the truck horn for a few seconds before passing out. Then everything went black for us both. The miraculous revelations I'm about to share are a reconstruction of events that were told to me by various sources and points of view. When I had called my grandpa earlier at gunpoint, I knew that Luisa was visiting her father, of course, but not at the prison. Her father, Juan Hernandez, had been released early from prison for good behavior that very day, and all 3 of them had returned to the farm to celebrate his freedom, a fact that Brandon and Dad must have been unaware of. I had hoped that by saying that Louisa was with me at the quarry, it would alert Grandpa that something was seriously wrong. Grandpa wanted to come alone to the quarry to meet whatever danger presented itself. There was no way in hell that Louisa wasn't going with him, and her dad wasn't allowing his daughter to be placed in harm's way unless he was there to protect her. Grandpa drove his truck and Louisa followed behind in her car with her dad as a passenger. She parked way back to avoid being seen and watched from a distance using binoculars. Brandon cut the cable ties from our wrists and ankles once we were rendered unconscious. Faye pulled the tape from our mouths, leaving no traces of our having been subdued. Brandon then started the truck engine, popped the transmission in neutral, and let it begin its slow, natural gravity descent toward the edge of the quarry, where we'd meet certain death. There was just enough slope toward the edge to allow the truck unfettered passage to its ignominious end. Brandon walked away from the scene and was nearing the gate that he'd pulled closed to prevent intrusions. He called for Faye to join him as they had a long walk to where he'd concealed his car. Faye seemed stuck in her shoes. He yelled for her again to catch up with him. Then Brandon heard a twig snap, which made him turn his head. As he looked up the road leading to the quarry, he caught a glimpse of a person running faster than he'd ever seen a human body move before. Jet black hair billowed behind her so forcefully that it appeared to be struggling to remain attached to her head. Her feet barely touched the ground as her toes launched her forward like a missile. He'd never seen anything like it in his life. In mere moments before he even had a chance to react, the blur had barely touched the top of the 4-foot-high barrier with her fingers, moving past him and leaping over it as if it wasn't there. Faye had not yet seen the approaching form. She muttered, "No, it's not right. It's just not right. Maybe he deserves to be punished, but he doesn't deserve to die." Knowing it would be futile to try to jump in the truck and attempt to use the brakes, Faye ran to the passenger door, hoping to pull me out of the careening vehicle. The door was locked. Faye's eyes became as big as saucers as she realized that there was no stopping it. Then she made a decision that I'll never understand to my dying day. Faye selflessly ran in front of the truck, pushing with all of her might to stop it, but there was too much momentum, and she was soon overcome. As her final attempt to undo what she'd helped Brandon set in motion failed, she offered the last thing she could to slow the truck down, her body. Faye threw her body underneath the truck and it jumped up as both sets of tires struck her and ran over her horizontal form. She had nothing left to give, nothing. The speedster had nearly made it to the truck when Brandon realized who it was and what she was trying to do. He grabbed his handgun and aimed it at the flying form, steadying his grip so he could pull the trigger and stop her. Before his finger could squeeze the trigger, the gun was ripped from his hand, brutally breaking 2 of his fingers in the process. Then, an extremely angry man's fist was the last thing Brandon saw before being knocked out cold with one extremely powerful punch. Louisa opened the driver's door and with extreme exertion shoved my lifeless grandpa over into me, making room for her in the front seat. She frantically pressed the brake pedal, which immediately went all the way to the floor, offering no resistance whatsoever. Now, in a major panic, Louisa yelled, "Quinn, if you can hear me, if you go, I go. We go together. I will not leave you." She'd known about the inoperative emergency brake on Grandpa's truck for years. When she was younger, she'd tried to use it many times before to no avail. Louisa mustered all of her strength and energy, unlocking every molecule of adrenaline that her body could produce. She shoved both of her feet in unison down on that emergency brake pedal and pushed. It was later said that the most ungodly groan ever heard escaped her as she gave her all to stop that truck. The front wheels slipped over the edge and dropped. What did Louisa do? Did she flee the truck? Hell no. She pressed and groaned even louder as incredible pain tore through her legs. Her muscles begged for her to allow them to collapse, but she would not permit it. Then, miraculously, the truck came to a stop. Afterward, when a mechanic checked the truck in the shop, he said that the solid steel beam emergency brake arm had been bent nearly 45 degrees. The pedal was all the way to the floor. He said he didn't have the strength to straighten it out nor bend it any further, even when using a pipe for leverage. Those emergency brake arms were manufactured much heavier duty in the old days. He had no explanation to offer as to how the hell Louisa did it. Faye, bless her heart, she was a mess. She spent 3.5 months in the hospital. When the truck wheels had run over her body, it slowed the truck down just enough to where Louisa had barely enough time to stop it before going over. But it took its toll on Faye. Her back was broken, and she would never walk again. She would recover but be wheelchair-bound for the rest of her life. When the ambulance and deputies arrived at the scene on the day of our attempted murder, Grandpa and I were treated at the scene and taken to the hospital for observation overnight. The uncertainty about the dosage of chloroform we had received concerned the doctors. We were released the following day. The sheriff's deputies were able to locate the bottle of chloroform used to subdue us, and the small box-end wrench that was used to compromise Grandpa's hydraulic brakes was found in Brandon's pocket with only his fingerprints on it. The gun he'd used to threaten us with was registered to Dad. Brandon's car had been located 1/4 mile away. The 4 adults were formally charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and drugging with intent to commit bodily harm. Faye testified against the other 3, and with her plea agreement along with my adamant recommendation, had all charges against her dropped. Many people say they'd lay down their life for someone they love, but precious few would actually follow through and do it. I'd had 2 women do just that at the same time. I would not have survived if either of them had not done what they did for me that day. Even though Faye had betrayed me in the worst possible way, she also willingly put her life on the line to save mine at the last moment. I didn't want her to spend years in prison. She'd be in a prison of her own for the rest of her life. My annulment sailed through the court without a hint of objection from Faye. I was a free agent. Louisa and I decided to wait until after all the legal family matters were settled before officially tying the knot. Tamara stayed with her aunt, Faye's sister, during the trials. She attended the proceedings, and her eyes were open to their murderous plot. Tamara came to me sobbing uncontrollably after all the incriminating testimony had been given. "I'm so sorry, Daddy," she entreated. "Mom and Brandon told me that you had planted evidence against him and your dad in the company computer, falsely accusing them of stealing. While you were out of the office coming to meet me at the quarry, they said they would use that time to copy the real files from your office computer to expose your plot and exonerate them. They just needed you out of your office for a short while. So when I called you that day to come to the quarry to rescue me, the ruse would give them the necessary access time in your office. I had no idea they were lying to me, Daddy, I swear. I thought I was just helping them to clear their names. You were nearly killed, and I helped them do it. I never wanted you hurt, not for a second. I hate what they did to you. Please believe me," she bawled. My attorney successfully sued my parents and Brandon. They were forced to liquidate everything and ended up bankrupt with no other recoverable assets. The proceeds were split between me and the company. Grandpa excluded himself from the lawsuits so that I would receive more. The company would never see full restitution of the embezzled amounts, but judgments were made against them in perpetuity even after serving their sentences. Dad and Mom were sentenced to 20 years each for felony conspiracy with no time off for good behavior. Brandon was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. As my final altruistic act toward Faye, in light of her permanent disability, suffered for trying to save my life despite everything else she had done, I took a small amount of the money awarded to me from the lawsuits and purchased a small home for her. I had a contractor go through the entire house to make it handicap-friendly. It took some convincing, but I finally talked Tamara into living with her mother and caring for her until she turned 18. Then, as an adult, she could make her own decisions from there. Faye was riddled with guilt and contrition and made it known at every opportunity. She wished Louisa and me every happiness and told Louisa she was getting the finest and most loving man she'd ever met. Juan had been welcomed back at Grandpa's farm with open arms, assuming his former position running the farm. He told me he never regretted a moment spent behind bars for what he did, saying he only wished he'd taken care of Alejandro much sooner. He was not charged with assaulting Brandon at the quarry. He had prevented his daughter's murder, and the DA ignored Brandon's pleas to charge him. Juan said his greatest regret in life was coming between Louisa and me all those years ago. If he'd simply let our hearts lead us to the rightful conclusion, a great deal of pain and anguish might have been avoided. Louisa nor I ever blamed him for anything other than being a protective father. 3 months after the sentencing hearings, Louisa and I tied the knot in a grand ceremony on the grounds of Grandpa's farm. It was a glorious setting. Grandpa had arranged for more flowers than Louisa or I had ever seen in one place. His wedding present was to transfer the stock early with a 20 grand bonus to pay for our honeymoon in Hawaii. We spent 2 magnificent weeks in Maui with day trips to the other islands. It was an experience neither of us could have ever imagined. We located a very nice 4-bedroom upscale home halfway between the plant and Grandpa's farm. We spent quite a bit of time in both places. Louisa and I were blissfully happy. She never had any fear that I would turn on her as Alejandro had done, and Juan called me his son from that day on. Call it luck, call it a miracle blessing from God, call it kismet, or call it a twist of fate. After 17 months of marriage, Louisa gave birth to a healthy baby boy. There was no doubt who the father was. He was my spitting image. We decided against naming him after me. Grandpa's surname is William. Juan's middle name is Martinez. We named him William Martin Davenport after 2 honorable men who we both admired, respected, and loved. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.